Alright, so let's look at the survey, guys. So we have almost 1,200 responses, which is really, really good. Bear in mind that this does have a bit of a duplication in a way, because I did encourage people to submit their responses when they cleared solo, and then if they came back and cleared it as a party, or vice versa, that they can certainly come back and submit it. So you do have a portion of this that probably might be a duplication, but when it splits into the different sections, I think you do get more adjusted responses, right? And I don't think you're gonna have too big of a wide variety of like answers that are you know, way too heavily on something. I feel like this is gonna be pretty fair. So at the time of the survey, did you clear PT? So you had the option, the people who said no, who countered the survey. So this is kind of a throwaway. If anything, it's just a check, right? It didn't want people answering the survey, hopefully, when they didn't clear and just gave, like, bad answers. So you had at least a large majority of people who did it. And honestly, this is still a good visual on, like, you know, maybe you wanted to take the survey and be like, no, this content's stupid. I don't want to take it. So I'm just going to be like, no, I didn't do this damn content because it's dumb. So at least you had a rather small percent of that of the larger population. All right. So here's our first moment of the of looking at this one. Did you watch videos, guides, or going blind? Now this is a weird question. I wanted to ask this anyway, but when you're trying to ask people out the first week, there probably aren't any guides to really look at, right? There's VODs to look at, but not really guides. But still, this is still good to see over time. So you're looking at a snapshot of like the first month of the content. So you had half of people going with blind progression of all the people who cleared, right? So it filtered it down to 900 responses, where 200 didn't do it. Half of them went blind. I went blind. And I'm sure this is still kind of like wishy-washy in a way. I mean, maybe if you saw like a video or two, I mean, do you still consider that blind, right? I mean, maybe you saw like a thumbnail. But we'll go with the fact that half of you went blind. 20% went with a guide. And then 30% went with some type of video. Like let's say you're watching my stream or Finn or anyone else doing it from the World Race, etc., right? So here's our little first little thing here, right? I don't remember how I wanted to do this correctly, so I think this is going to be the best way. So let's just take all of this text here. I'm gonna paste it into oh, actually I pasted straight into... So we did display names and their frequencies and how many times they were mentioned, right? So here's a decent one, but this can be filtered even further here. Well, okay, so we'll work with this one, right? So we had a good amount using Meiji's guide, because Meiji's guide definitely was there. She got it out really fast. Finn had I think his guide out pretty quickly. Mine only got released now. I only released it last week, so also checks out, because I think I released it post the survey. But you had, you know, the usual three suspects here. Azurite had some as well. Same with Zenosis and Aurora, because they're probably looking at the videos over there, so... There you go. Those are the guide makers. Okay, so let's bring it back to the survey. Okay, so here we had the next kind of dispersal of respondents, because this split it into parties and to solo, which this is a fair... I don't know what you guys think about this. About it being like 45% solo and 54%. Like, I don't know if I was expecting more party than solo, but this was a large amount of solo. Now, to be fair, my reach in our community is solo, so maybe it's also kind of weighted a little heavier in this situation. But you had about a good chunk of people going in solo, which I imagine if you look at that in maybe the other deep dungeons, that's probably a far less number. Just the nature of the deep dungeon. So you could maybe assume that this kind of... You see my cursor, by the way? You do see my cursor. This can probably be a testament to PT in itself, but it also would mean like people initially wanted to try it solo. Maybe they were okay with going into it. Like that's a thing that I would be interested in. I didn't ask in the survey, like, did they already think of the idea of doing it solo, and maybe it comes down to them being encouraged or not to continue. Although floor 10 is also funny, but okay, so we have our next little bullet point here. How many attempts did it take you to clear it solo? Display the frequencies of how many attempts people took to clear PT? I don't really think it's gonna know what PT is though, but we'll go with that. Several LOL. Lost count. Nice. Around 10. Okay. Show how many times attempts were displayed? Oh, this is pretty good. Okay. Someone typed 1,000, so that's clearly inaccurate, maybe. These do not count as responses. Okay, that's her. So, if anything, this one. So most people in how many responses we had? It was 440. A good chunk of people said about 2 times to clear PT. You had a good chunk with 3 and 4. I mean, I took like, I don't even know how many attempts it took me. I think it was something like 10 or something. So you had a good chunk of people within that kind of short time frame, that short frequency amount of like between 1 and 5. That's fair. I mean, that's about what you'd expect, I would say, from the information for sure. So that doesn't surprise me with the how long it took people to clear. Especially because it leans into it being easy. It was 2 for you. Might have been 1 if I saw orange AoE in the orange desert, but no, I didn't. Dang. Yeah, I mean, mine was like, I mean, I ran through 71 plus like multiple times. I mean, I spent, what, 12 hours there? So, do you count checkpointing 99 for like 99? I imagine, I mean, this was just an open-ended question, right? I mean, whatever, it was kind of up to the user to interpret what that meant for them. I mean, you have people who are like, you know, they'll die from like 1 to 30 and they don't count that as an attempt. I mean, personally, like back when I was doing the other deep dungeons, I did count an attempt that I didn't reach up to like 51 plus or something. Do I count it? Do I count that as an attempt? Would I count that as an attempt? Well, yes, because how I organized it was I was going to get to the 99 die on purpose, and then take the 99 checkpoint to learn. So how, I guess, like... Okay, let's say attempt number 1 got to 99, and then I did 99. To me, that would be 1 full attempt. Does that make sense? Like, progging a boss and doing a boss for an hour, dying to it like 20 times, I don't count as individual attempts. That would technically be like 1 attempt. I don't know. That's a complicated question. Babs, for this one is tricky. I think I only took 2 save files from 0 because of the prog points. Yeah, like... Because, again, I had a whole 10-hour stream of just progging 71 plus. So, like, you'll get people who would do that and then not count that as an attempt, where I kind of counted that as an attempt in a way. Like, when I put up the VODs, it was like, oh, here's attempt number 5 from me starting at 71. But people will be, like yourself, Babs, where like, okay, my attempts count when I start from 1. Because this is the actual attempt to clearing the content, right? And then you then threw away checkpoints because you're like, well, this wasn't getting the title, so theoretically speaking, this wasn't a attempt at the title. This was just learning. So yeah, you can definitely get some like interesting responses because of that. Yeah. So that, I mean, still, I mean, it kind of shows a number, I suppose. So I was only counting solo attempt. If I don't include all party ones, I would have way more. Yeah, and yeah, if I included, like, again, like, the amount of times I ran 99, if I included all the 71s, then yeah, that would be, like, way more. Okay, so then, that's the solo attempt, the short answer for that one. So yeah, maybe I could have asked this a little bit better, but it's fine, it's not a big deal. Did you duty fail? Okay, by the way, this category is the solo runners in general. This was further filtered down into like the people who cleared it for the first time, like never cleared a deep dungeon and then cleared PT for the first time, and then people who cleared multiple deep dungeons prior to. So you're still in this category where it's encompassing everyone. So now the next question was, did you duty fail on floor 10? Which I thought this was actually a later addition to the survey, and most people did yes at some point. Yes, you died to floor 10, and this was like a little ambiguous because I I mean, you could have gone through like attempt number 10 and died on it, and that still counted, right, in your mind? I mean, I guess compared to, like, let's say Palace of the Dead floor 10 or Heaven on High floor 10, where, like, that number is probably near 0, because no matter, you know, unless you really just kind of messed up and didn't pay attention, you're probably not dying to those bosses. Although, I would say people died to floor 10 POTD probably more than Heaven on High floor 10. And we're not including EO, because I'm sure a lot of people probably died to EO, but that's a different story. It was a hard boss. So it was definitely justified to see this number. And anyone else still feeling weird about dying to floor 10, well, here's your justification that more than half of the community of soloers died. 270 of them, 61% of people died in floor 10 at some point. And then, of course, you're talking about the survey a month later, right? So will you go for another clear? And a good chunk of people said yes, at least one more. Which I think was definitely an interesting thing to see, considering the initial first couple of weeks where we were definitely seeing a little bit more on the negative side from the veterans about how people weren't too happy with PT and kind of their thoughts of it. They thought it was too easy, right? And we'll get to that later, right? But this was still interesting because I would say a good chunk of the people who were a lot more negative towards PT, you would kind of include it in this question, because a lot of them gave it a chance, if you will, right? They didn't just do the first clear and then give up. They were like, okay, let me give it a couple more clears and see how I feel. Like Omniros was one gentleman who, he's like, I'm going 8 clears. After 8 clears, I'm going to reassess things, right? So this is this is still an interesting number in general, because even though you had people who were probably disappointed with the content from one side of things, you still had a vast majority who were still okay with at least going back in for another clear. Part of me wants to try to get on the scoring board. Yeah, me too. And scoring, I think, will be interesting to see it, in terms of, like, if it becomes competitive. Okay, so this next question here is another filter, right? Because I want to see people who are veterans of the content, and then see people who are not veterans of the content. So is this your first solo deep dungeon? So a vast majority were no. But of course this is like a little skewed because I'm asking from a community of solo deep dungeoners. So in essence, this was me trying to reach people who have never been part of the community. But this is still a pretty good split, right? So a large chunk of it obviously have not, but a decent chunk of it, a good 60. Honestly, finding 60 people who had cleared solo and then partially be part of the survey was pretty neat, right? So that's kind of cool. Okay, so the first category here is, was PT my first PT was my first solo title. So we were asking questions of the people who had not cleared another deep dungeon, and PT was their first one, which is also part of some of our interviews that we had, and I had 11 gamers for that interview, and I'm still steadily working on that one. But here we go. Do you have intentions of going for other solo titles? This is very interesting. This chart here is very interesting. So, of the 60, 16% said no. They're happy with PT. Fair. But a vast majority of that, which basically would be what, like 75%, were like at least going to go for one of the deep dungeons. A good chunk of them didn't know which one, but a good slice here, right? EO being only at 12%, but I mean, it's 7 people. I mean, it's a small sample size. With Heaven on High and POTD being kind of equal here at 15. So this was good to see it. Because one thing you would hope is that PT would be, in essence, kind of a gateway to maybe trying the other ones, maybe giving you confidence, which is something I've heard, that, oh, I could solo a deep dungeon, let's try the other ones. So this was encouraging to see, and I do wonder if this kind of stayed true over time, right? To see if some of the gamers did do that as the first time and did actually go for those clears. I mean, maybe they're still in the process of doing so. And would be also interesting to see, like, how they felt about it. Yo, what up, Snack? Yeah, man, I haven't played this game in, like, what, an hour now? So... we're yapping. I don't yap, dude. I'm an introvert. What is yapping? Okay, continuing into the PT was my first solo title. Did you find clearing PT solo challenging? So of these 60 responses, okay, and again, these are the people who did this for the first time. Very different from the people who did it multiple times. People who did it for the first time. A good chunk of it, more than half, thought it was pretty hard, but not as difficult as some of the things that they've done in the game. You had actually a decent chunk of it, 5 people who actually thought this was the hardest thing in the game. Of course, this is still kind of a very broad scope. You know, if they didn't do, like, you know, raids and everything, or just kind of doing Deep Dungeon and this is the first one, or they're fresh into the game, you could kind of count that as part of the thing. So this is fair, right? Completely fair. And then and honestly, seeing people who have never done a deep dungeon prior, or at least maybe have done it, you do have people who tried other ones before. Some of them still thinking it's pretty easy. So now we have this bullet point. This is the follow-up to I found clearing PT solo challenging. So here, this is where I probably would, if you guys are smart with finding information here, let me see what I can do with the filtering of this intro. So let's get this file here. Show the responses that said easy and hard in a table. Easy, easier, harder. Difficult. Okay, I think this is a decent snapshot. So, do not truncate. Harder versus easier. I was doing POTD some years ago up to 180 and died to Behemoth, and I felt POTD was a lot harder than PT is. Fair. The quantity of silver chests on the higher floors made a lot of them trivial. Fair. And again, if you guys want to see any specific data points, definitely tell me as we go. I'm just gonna kind of skim through this, right? It was really easy after my PT solo clear. I cleared Heaven on High the day after for the first time in 1. Thanks to my guide. HOH was 10 times harder. So this is okay, responses containing easier or trivial. Okay, so that was part of that, right? So then now here, all these things made for the challenging experience. I would say the difficulty is more fair compared to POTD. It was stressful because of how easily you can fail and how much time it takes to get back up to the higher floor, but not that difficult. It doesn't take any time to learn. Generally don't understand why SC sinks so much time into content like this. Yes, that's the response you want to hear. The 1 to 100 round fail challenge even not overly long or unfair. While this was for sure challenging, it was also the easiest deep dungeon to solo. Okay. DSR top prog was more difficult, and I've reached 186 in POTD solo, which is also much more difficult. Fair. That's a decent comparison. So yeah, even like for the people who have cleared it, actually, is there another way I can do this? Hold on. Display frequency times easier or harder were mentioned. Okay, let's try this one. Maybe I can get a number here of like how many times each of them were kind of displayed. If it's gonna do it. Yeah, it's like a smaller number there. 10 easier, 8 harder. Yeah, so I mean, a good chunk of the new players who were doing it for the first time still thought it was on the easier side. Which, again, you can take as whatever, because that could be a good thing or a bad thing. I mean, if it got them in the content, then maybe that's a good thing. But I don't know, I still kind of want it to be... if I put my own opinion, I would still prefer it to be more challenging. But if it kind of encouraged people to be able to do the content, maybe that's a win, right? Sure. Okay. Did you have fun with PT for the 60 people who gamed? And a good chunk of them right here. This is 95% had a 4 or 5 star rating of having fun. And that's where also that's an interesting split here. Because the kind of correlation of easy to fun is something that was interesting, because something can be really easy, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's taking away the fun. You can still have fun with the content, but, difficulty kind of has its own different category. I mean, I'm sure some of you guys will have a bit of a different thing with that. Maybe for some of you, it needs to be difficult for it to be fun, which is completely fair. But there are definitely game modes and everything that I've played in multiple games where at least it starts off like fun and easy and then ramps up later, where like at least in PT you don't necessarily have too big of a ramp up, so it kind of stays on that kind of easy in that easy mode. But I mean, I personally still had a good time. So this definitely checks out, I think, with most of what I heard from people about, were they having fun with the content. Yes, you had a lot of people saying it was easy, but he did have a lot of people at least saying that they had a good time, and maybe that's also part of the reason why people were okay with going back in, doing at least another clear, because at least their first time was not bad, right? Okay, so let's take this one. See, this one is going to be interesting, right? Because the display if responses had fun or did not have fun. Finally here, we are, well, not quite. You have at least another 10 days till it happens, but I'm being so realistic of it. Like, I know, I'm excited. It's just, I'm like, yeah, I gotta see it first. I mean, you know, it's been like 10 years. I mean, I can be a little cautious with the thing, right? Okay, so this was the, yeah. And to be fair, also, Time Mizu, like, they're implementing it, like, for one of the first times, right? So this is something that isn't in the game currently. So it's going to be interesting to see how it goes on, right? Because that's part of what I'm thinking of, is like, okay, how is it actually going to work? I want to test it out right... Well, I won't be able to test it out right away, but I kind of want to test it out whenever I'm able to. So here we're asking these are the short responses of the first time soloers and if they had fun. So here, most respondents clearly stated they had fun or used strong positive language such as "I had a wonderful time," "very big fun," "absolute blast." Mostly, "I had a fair bit of fun." Pretty fun, especially the first 40 floors. See, this was big, because that's like not EO. Being able to LOS is nice. Bosses are really, really fun to fight. Okay. Good environments, good music. Mixed, qualified fun, but still mostly positive. Mostly had a fair bit of fun, but I didn't like it. I don't feel like it was very challenging. The last 20 a bit underwhelming. Anti-fun mob, Forgiven Doubt. You didn't like Forgiven Doubt? Who said it? If you're in chat, speak up now. But you liked the dungeon. Responses that did not have fun. I think that's a throwaway. I think most of the people here had fun, so we'll take that. So yeah, I mean, I guess it was a bit of a... I was leaning into, like, the question, right? Hey, did you have fun? Tell me why you had fun. It's in this, as opposed to if you had fun, let me know. I'll probably experience it when I have DC issues, so I'll talk about how... Yeah, I will be interested to see what people think immediately on the, the day. I'm sure we're gonna hear feedback immediately. I'm sure people are gonna test it. I feel like Finn is gonna be like one of the ones that like maybe test it right away if he's still subbed the game. So, okay, I gotta hit an ad here. So let's hit an ad first, and then we'll continue going through the survey. Thank you guys for watching. This might take all stream, so I hope you guys will enjoy this because we'll go over every single bit of this. And again, if you want to see certain data points or you want to go over certain things, let me know. I'm gonna try to do this in more of a very kind of like condensed matter, but we can dive into something a lot more detailed if needed. So you just guys let me know. But otherwise, we'll be back. Ads. As I hear the screeching of a mouse in my ear. Okay, so let's go to the next one. Alright, so now we're into the section of the veterans. I've been around the solo block before. This is the part where this is my category. This is probably a lot of your categories as well, right? How would you rate the difficulty of PT compared to the other deep dungeons? Look at this overwhelming response of easiest of the 4 deep dungeons. With a little bit here, and literally no one saying that it was the most difficult. Not a single person of the 380 that responded said it was the most difficult. It's a Pac-Man right here. This is literally Pac-Man. And that's fair, right? Because that's kind of the response you got from people about it from when we were doing streams and we were talking it over and some of the, you know, the exit polls, etc. So this definitely checks out. I mean, I agree with this. I say, yeah, it's the easiest of the 4. I mean, I don't have an argument there. So let's take the next part of this, right? Actually, I think I have the one that I was playing around with. Let me use the one that I used here, because actually the way this program did it was actually really nice here. Was PT solo challenging? Okay, so this is actually such a good analysis here. So, and you had so many different ways people were explaining to it, right? Overall difficulty, PT is considered the easiest. Easiest of the 4, way too easy forgiving, there's nothing threatening in PT. Floor difficulty, too easy, especially 71 to 81, 100. Lacking of scaling in higher floors. This is the key themes. Mobs don't feel threatening, especially 71 plus. 81 plus is pure joke and difficulty. Last sets felt very generous. Monsters stop scaling after 61. That's not true, but that's fair. I mean, if you're not getting hit with it, it doesn't really matter, right? 1 to 39 should be harder. 1 to 39 should be harder. No. Well, I liked it, actually, the way it was. 81 to 100, much higher. Low mob damage, simple mechanics. Most frontal cone, mostly frontal cones, and point blank AoEs. Auto attacks don't hurt. Very predictable. Yeah, I would agree with this one. There is only a like you can count in one hand how many AoEs were actually a surprise, but that's much. Boss difficulty. Boss seen as more fun than hard. Bosses were the real highlight. Engaging, forgiving, more interesting than POTD in Heaven on High, but not EO mentioned. 99 and 10 standout with the only 99 and 10 are the only hurdles. 10 boss DPS check is brutal. Practice mode reduced threat. Being able to practice 99 made it a formality. That's fair. That's fair. Incenses and votives. Overpowered, trivializing. Votives and incenses are busted. Welcome back to the IS, guys. Crazy strong, almost a free boss win. Too common in 81 plus. Incense drops way too much in 81 to 100. Yes, I agree with that. Resource management, essentially unnecessary. No pomander management needed. Swimming in resources, I spent recklessly and wasn't punished. Yeah, and that is definitely one big factor that I hear a lot of people talking about is that, and this is one thing that I definitely agree with, was that there was no resource management, right? This resource management also leads into decision making, and there wasn't much decision making, right? Decision making was doing your rotation, not really managing your pomanders, in my opinion. One argument that I was always making was that it's like they created PT, but then slapped on the original pomander thing, and were like, okay, I hope it works, as opposed to trying to design the pomanders necessarily around PT, where like POTD, you could argue, and the introduction of Magicites in Heaven on High, were a situation where they were trying to mold the deep dungeon around, or use the pomanders and kind of synergize it together. But there definitely it felt like the synergy of the pomanders with the deep dungeon were just very off. Like it was like it just didn't seem to make sense correctly, if that makes sense. But it's like they had to stick to kind of the skeleton of what deep dungeon was, and they thought that that was a good idea. But this is kind of your kind of thing that kind of happened, was that resource management. Time pressure, almost non-existent. Never felt pressed to time. Time management does not exist. Comparison to other deep dungeons. Ranked as easier than EO, POTD, and Heaven on High. Positive feedback. Accessibility, boss design, visuals. Great for casual players. Bosses are engaging. Best areas aesthetic-wise. Common criticism. Too forgiving. Low sense of achievement. Suggested improvements. Increased mob scaling. Reduce incense rotives. You had a large frequency of people saying it was too easy. A good amount of people saying it was fun and accessible, though. So there's that. Good boss design. Too hard. I had one person saying that. Okay, so then now I kind of split this into mentions about how many times things were mentioned. So floor difficulty too easy. You had a good chunk, 54 people saying this was the highest weighted. Most dominant complaint was that the floor difficulty was too easy. Overpowered incenses were quite a lot mentioned, 39 of you guys. Overall easiest deep dungeon. Bosses are fun and engaging was pretty high too. Interpretation, highlight of PT. It's funny. So yeah, I mean, a lot of this was on the easier side from the veteran case of like what you guys thought of it, right? And this can argue that was a negative of the deep dungeon, that it was too much. And I mean, it wasn't simply just that it was easy. There was more reasons to it. The resource management, how the pomanders dropped, you know, and that kind of led into time pressure, where it wasn't there, or no decision making, or the enemies being easier, right? So there's a whole bunch of aspects that kind of led into the content being the way it was. So that's it in a chart. So bosses were widely enjoyed, accessibility was appreciated, it was considered more fun than stressful. That's actually interesting, right there. Considered more fun than stressful. Yeah, I agree with that one. Okay, so that was what you guys thought, the veterans, and what they thought about the challenge of the difficulty of PT. So now you come into here. which is kind of telling also, right? Because you can say it's easy, you can say it's whatever, but this is kind of interesting, right? How much fun did you have with PT? And most of you guys, what is this? 38%. This is like plus 77%. We're here in the happier side of things, higher in the 4. But yeah, most of the gamers did have fun with the content regardless. Average rating of 4.05 out of 5. Okay, so let's take this one. I hope the next one is PT style, but harder. I think this was a nice way to refresh the style content, especially after EO. I think they still need to do quite more of the overhaul. I mean, the accessibility was certainly nice, that's for sure. And I think that definitely was appealing to lots of people, so that you take away as the positive. The bosses were positive, but that decision-making, I think, is huge in my opinion, that it just didn't exist, and I think you want more of that. You know, and I'll go back to my comment about how the Poemanders in itself, I feel like, was almost a failure in PT, because it just didn't seem like those Poemanders made sense for PT. And I had made this argument with a couple of the guys before, where, like, in all honesty, you can keep PT exactly the way it is, but if you adjusted what Poemanders you actually have, and you could argue even frequency of Poemanders, it could be a very, very different Deep Dungeon, in my opinion. Just that alone. You just leave PT the way it is and go that way. Pingu says, hey, just seeing that you're live. Just been using the Machinist Guide on POTD on my second try, just died to 189 like 5 minutes ago, but I wouldn't have gotten... Oh, I appreciate it. Well, keep me posted, Pingu. And I wish you the best of luck on your next attempts, and that's really good. Too bad you missed Godfather, but that's pretty dang good, so hell yeah, dude. Hope you're interested in PT discussion. Okay, display weather responses. Oh wait, are you guys seeing this? No, yeah, okay. Display whether responses were positive fun or negative fun. I don't know how that's gonna come out, but let's figure this out. Hey Ryan, I feel like Purification was a response to votives that put more traps in the forward, but the votives barely added traps, and so the Poemanders is pretty useless. It should have done more than just that, though. I mean, that's the part where that was still kind of very odd, with Purification, so... Overall sentiment, strongly positive fun. Positive fun, negative fun. I don't know how they're gonna describe negative fun. It would have slapped in POTD, you're right. But what would you take away in POTD to replace it? What are you taking out of POTD to put in a Purification? I loved it. Had a blast. Very fun. Most fun Deep Dungeon. Enjoyed it a lot. Great experience. Really liked it. Super happy with it. Too easy, but still very fun. Not challenging enough, but I loved it. Disappointing difficulty, but I had a blast. Boring, disappointing, sucks. No challenge, not fun. Worst Deep Dungeon. I could already imagine who said this one. Won't be playing again. I could also imagine who's saying that. Had very little enjoyment. Only fun the first time. Not worth repeating. These were in the minority. Display frequencies of positive versus negative. Nothing. You can't... I mean, I guess you could, right? Okay, so of the 300 that had it here, you had a vast majority, 240 to 270, were happy with it. They were happy with the fun. And you had a small portion who did not have fun. Which checks out with the star rating, right? 4.05 out of 5. So, I mean, this is the data point here that makes it interesting, right? Because this is one of the reasons why the survey, I thought, as time went on, that it was more important to see what people thought, because you did have people talking about how they felt like it was weird to be positive about PT, because all they really heard was that PT was like more on the negative side, or all they heard was people complaining about PT. But this is the veteran responses to what PT was, and in general, from their first clear, they legitimately had fun. Now, of course, you can talk about clear 5 and 6 not being quite there. That's okay, and the people who say that they're not having fun, very legitimate. Of course, you still have to deal with the social media aspect of, like, people having louder voices, blah, blah, blah. But this part of the survey showcased that in reality, most of the people did have a good time with the content, right? On their first clear. Again, second clear, different. But on the first clear, you did have. So you have to wonder if that was actually kind of what they were hoping for. What's up, Catman? That was a good thing that SE wanted. That, you know, I kept hearing that the battle director wanted it to be fun content, and well, they kind of hit that because people did in fact have fun. So, yay. I mean, that's a plus for PT, right? So take that as you will, as a data point. But that is also kind of what I saw when we were doing the content. That when we were discussing with people, that I personally saw a heavier weight towards people saying they had a good time and having fun with it than the opposite side. Because the opposite side, again, are people who probably had some of the louder voices who were willing to say that. And I could totally see how people started to get the perspective that it was more... They thought PT was more on the negative side, or they thought PT was more on the downside. So, I mean, that's purely just, you know, your circle of friends, where you're looking at information. I mean, it's like on Twitter. I always joke about this on Twitter, right? I have people that I follow on Twitter who will basically be like, "Oh man, I can't believe this drama on Twitter. Like, I'm just gonna cut off some social media for like a month because this is ridiculous. Like, everyone is negative." And meanwhile, on my Twitter, I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. My Twitter is blessed, and I see only good things. You know, so it is kind of the way you surround yourself with who you look at and who you follow. What doom posting is always the terminology people say. So that leads into sometimes that if you only see negative, then that is the perception you're going to have, right? If you hang around and you only look at areas where they're talking about it negative, then how can you possibly see that as positive? Whereas on the flip side, if only you put yourself in that bubble of only seeing positive, you only see that's positive, right? So, I mean, I know when I was looking through all the responses, it was a mix of things, but I would say it probably was leaning more towards a happier experience for most people. What's up, Prince? So that definitely checks out with what I saw. But, you know, I can understand how people maybe saw one way or another way, so... Twitter algorithm never ever interact with it. You don't like it in your recommended feed, it will give you everything possible in that moment. It's so sensitive. I don't care. Like, my thing is, like, I only look at who I follow, and who I follow are great. So it always makes me... I honestly laugh at that when I see other mutuals and creators being like, "Oh man, like, Twitter's so toxic, this is the worst place ever." And I'm like, sure, but I mean, I don't follow people who are toxic, and like, to me, it's like, I don't see why that's a problem. Just don't follow people who are toxic. Like, to me, it's like, isn't it that easy? Just obviously, like, look at the people you want to look at that are not actually toxic, and imagine that you don't actually see toxicity. But, I don't know, whatever. I haven't been on social media since Moscow Twitter, can't imagine ever going back. See, and I understand that, Varmint, right? I get that point. But, like, again, if you're on my Twitter, you're not gonna really see much of that. So, is there a way to filter response? No, there isn't. There unfortunately is not, because it didn't record it on date, and I wanted to be this more open-ended, so there wasn't... I didn't want to force emails and everything, so I couldn't do that. And you're right. There are going to be situations where, even like 3 weeks from now, rather, survey comes out, right? 3 weeks later, you can have a very different response 3 weeks later. But if anything, I felt like Slow Dancer, this survey was a good snapshot of the first clear, right? Because I didn't ask about the second clear. I didn't ask about the 10th clear. I asked about the first clear. So I would almost argue that you could almost create a whole nother survey about what do you feel about PT now 3 months later? You know, how are you doing? Are you still doing the content? People here are outside, right? I mean, you have people here still outside right now, right? So, it definitely creates like an interesting perspective in that front. But if anything, this gives a nice snapshot of what at least people thought of the content when it first released. So, most people probably don't even know that there's a follower-only feed and just scroll. Yeah. I don't think so either, because anytime I accidentally go to For You, I'm already in like dangerous territory, so I don't even bother. My entire Twitter is cute animals and anime boobies. I rarely see any. Yeah, and I see the occasional holo post, and I'm very happy with that too. So, but yeah. So to me, it's just I kind of just giggle every time someone has like a freaking like a freaking meltdown on Twitter. I'm like. Like, I catch on to, like, some drama only after people start talking about it. I don't even catch on to it, like, when it starts. And, like, people are talking in, like, riddles. It's like the Facebook joke, right? It's like, oh, man, you know, oh, it's really had a rough one. And you're like, what happened? They're like, I don't want to talk about it. That's kind of how it is for me on Twitter at the moment, right? People just talk about things in, like, riddles. And I'm like, okay, I mean... Are you asking for engagement, or are you gonna say what it is, and I just don't bother anymore. Better to just be ignorant. Okay, so we did this one, right? This was the one I just did. This was the did you have fun part, and we had most people have fun with this. Out of the 302 responses who gave a short answer, 250 of them had fun. Okay, so we got into more nitty-gritty things, which were more detailed, and this was interesting to me to see people realize that these were changes. And maybe you guys in chat don't even know that these were changes, right? What do you think of the adjustments of how we obtained regen potions and potions in PT? Because we, going into this, knew about the POTD changes, but they did make changes in PT that, to me, were very obvious, which were the fact that some enemies dropped them, I think, but also the chest... No, I don't think enemies dropped them. No, I take that back. The chests themselves, the bronze chest, had a bigger pool of items that you can get. So the chest could give you a single potion, Pilgrim potion. They can give you an ultra potion. They can give you 2 glasses in there in the 31 to 70 set. And that was like an exponential amount of glasses that you could farm in. But then also you had the other side where 71 plus, they didn't exist anymore. You didn't get any more glasses 71 plus. So there was definite clear changes to the formula of the bronze chests. And of the 380 responses, a lot of people overwhelmingly thought there was a good change. You had a good chunk of people here who didn't actually like it. And they actually like the old school version of Heaven on High and EO. That's why I specifically said Heaven on High EO, not POTD. I didn't want to muddle that response any further. And he had a couple people who, 10%, who didn't realize that there was change, which is fair. I mean, maybe you don't really pay attention to that things, and that's kind of why it's there, right? So... it's definitely better than constantly getting Phoenix Downs to bronze chests. Right, and I think the biggest adjustment I liked from at least Palace of the Dead Prince was that now you can basically get all of it. Like, you can get a potion and a Phoenix Down and this, right? And, like, you can just... It wasn't just one item or bust. You can actually get multiple items, which is nice, because then you just get the best of both worlds. Love this change, says Auntie. Save my sanity farming pots for... Yeah. And you know what's actually funny about that, Antiquarian? Was that... You know, someone who is a soloer or had done Deep Dungeon before would look at this as a positive change. But even with this change, people who only did Quantum, from what I heard, actually thought it was a chore to get those potions because they weren't used to that farm. So I think our perspective in the community is fascinating because we look at it as something where it was a lot worse. And then because of that, and we saw that it's better, then to us it's like, oh, at least it's better than before. Whereas someone who never had to farm potions before are looking at this as like a travesty to their life, right? It's a waste of time, and that's fine. I mean, you don't like Deep Dungeon, but you have to do Deep Dungeon to do the content, so that makes sense. So, you know, it's definitely interesting in that perspective, but I think in general, getting 50% more glasses overall is great. I mean, I have here, where's my thing? I mean, the amount of time I've been doing Deep Dungeon here, we have 336, and I mean... That's a lot. So, I mean, that's more than I ever need, ever. And I didn't spend any of it, so... and you could only get them at the 4th floor and 9th floor of each set. Yeah, and that's old Deep Dungeon too, right? I mean, that part is still old Deep Dungeon that you only start getting it on the 4th floor. I think that applies to all the floors, I believe, unless it's only like story floors. But that's like very old Deep Dungeon, but still. Just a quality of lifetime save for an actual fun. Yep. People who talk about the game being dead all the time is what helps kill the game. Ironic. People who talk about game being dead all the time is what helps kill the game. Well, they kind of get what they wish, right, Val? And that's what it is, right? That's kind of where I was mentioning earlier about the louder voices kind of coming out a little bit stronger. Is because if you kind of surround yourself only hearing those voices, then that's all you're going to hear. You know, that you don't hear from all the other points of view. So yeah, I mean, if you will it to be, then you could probably will it to be that. But, I mean, there's still a lot of people out here on a Friday night in PT. I mean, I would say that's a lot of people, so. Okay, so the next one. Would you like to see the regen potion potsherd adjustments in Heaven on High and EO? This is building off the previous response, right? 85% of people said they knew that there was a change. So based on the 85%, most of them said yes. So what do you think, chat? Would you guys like to see the PT adjustment in Heaven on High and EO? I mean, I could also ask if you wanted to see the POTD adjustment, but I don't mean, I don't want the Palace of the Dead adjustment in in Heaven on High and EO. I think that's way too aggressive. This one is good, so... Yeah, so that's a good number. Yeah, yes. Yeah, so then that makes sense, right? I mean, you have the chunk of people who didn't notice it's a change. You still have the crazy people who wanted to not to not change at all. I think 49% was just Cog saying it 50 times, but you know, that's just me. PT has the best system. I think it's the most balanced in my opinion. It's not too much, just a little bit. So probably Beauty healing pod shop and Beauty. Yeah, it's too aggressive in Palace. Look, I like a good change, but like I'm fair in my opinion, and that is way too aggressive. Because my take on that one basically, especially with the Ether Pool, which I think will be coming up here, is that like, why have Ether Pool at that point, right? Like, if you want the Ether Pool to be a system, which one can argue whether it should be a system or not, if you're going to do it to the level of Palace, why have Ether Pool to begin with? Just give everyone 99 and just move on, right? What's the point? Just eliminate it. But here, in PT, I felt like this was a good balance because it still felt like Ether Pool had a factor, and you still had to spend the time to grind to go it, but it was at least a grind that was 2 times faster. We'll get to it in a bit. So let's do this one. Let me get this data point here, and then let's try to answer a question. And again, if you guys want me to ask a certain question, let me know. But I mean, I'm trying my best here, but display responses... Did I not type... Oh, I didn't type it right. Display responses... Whether potion changes were good or bad. In a frequency. I think PUTD is good since you need every weapon to get the achievement, whereas all the other deep dungeon... That, you know what? That's fair, but I would counter-argue into why they didn't do those achievements in the other deep dungeons. Because I would prefer that. I feel like there's still a band-aid to a solution that didn't need a band-aid. Okay, so 65% of people said it was good. Mixed said 25%. Bad negative. 100 responses reviewed. Oh, I want to see the bad. And the okay, hold on. Display the responses qualified as bad in a table not truncated. To be clear, I want Heaven on High and EO's Potsherd farming system jobs to be changed, but I don't want PT-specific changes to be implemented.
Oh nice, he didn't know I had 24-month.
Hey!
Nice to watch this PT review, Angelus.
Oh, thank you for the 2 years, Val. I appreciate it. What's up, Air? Air, what do you think about the DC protection? No, it's not just my stream, it's a react stream. I'm actually reacting. Our counter, why didn't they make PT's upgraded weapons glow to make them worth going for? Yeah, the change for PT's weapons were very subtle. I would have preferred it to be more than what it was. I was hoping for a glow, but okay. So let's go over this one, right? We had how many responses? 15 responses. Okay, so felt like a certain amount of challenge was removed, and this is okay. To just give this a context again, right? This was about the regen potion change in PT. So, felt like a certain amount of challenge was removed. I recall having to go through the farming sustains to even have a chance at clearing in the previous deep dungeon, so it feels off. Perhaps it can be different. Perhaps it can be a distant thought that this is supposed to be hard, thinking back to Heaven on High and PUTD specifically. I mean, that's fair, right? The only noticeable thing about them is how unnecessary they were. Okay? It is certainly far too easy to obtain them, having over 4,000 Pilgrim's potions. PT drops too many Ether Pool Glass to the point that you will never run out of them. Enemies simply do not do enough damage to even have the big need for them. Brown chests here make utterly no sense. In 81 plus, they simply drop nothing noteworthy. Yeah, I mean, that's also true, so... They're worth going for, they don't need to glow. No, they need to glow. What are you talking about? Different potsherd fragments for each deep dungeon doesn't make sense. Streamlining it makes it easier for... What are you talking about, Snag? When we're in Deep Dungeon 8, I'm really excited to have my entire inventory to be filled with potions. Sorry, did you ask me? Oh, I I don't know if you heard that they're gonna give DC protection for a deep dungeon starting in 7.4, and I wanted to ask you about it since I remember we had that whole issue with your disconnects and stuff. They could have made them glow after you get your solo clear. I would have liked an option to glow, right? So yeah, 10 years too late, but yeah. If they wanted less of a grind, make more rewards. What do I do with 4K potions? So this is the commonality that I'm seeing, is that you guys have too many potions. Would you argue that you guys have too many potions? Because I have too many potions. Just double the amount or triple it if in the higher floors of potsherds you get from the bronze chest. No need to drop regen potions from mobs. What do you want me to do with potsherds now from PUT? Oh, well, someone's asked about... I didn't ask about PUTD. I wasn't... Okay, that's fine. I feel like they're easier to get, but most things with Final Fantasy 14, I think they overcorrected. Getting potions from EO in particular felt awful, but PT throws so many at you that I basically just hit it on cooldown even out of combat. I like to see more of a balance where I don't necessarily need to try too hard to farm them, but I'm not drowning in potions either. That's very optimistic, and never will happen. I don't see how they ever get an intern to correctly balance this. I said intern. I definitely don't want the universal sustain LMAO. I'd rather have 8 different than 1 universal. 8 no, 1 Al here using your Biggie potions and Bosha. You're gonna run out of inventory at some point. They're gonna have to figure something out. Pilgrim potions are pretty much mandatory for Quantum. Yeah, and you know, this is the funny response, right? Bringing Quantum back into the fold. Again, I was hearing people who were doing Quantum who were like, bro, I can't, dude, I have to farm this. This is annoying. I can't get enough potions. And then this whole thing about this whole negative section of the regen potions, everyone's like, I have too many, dude. I'm sitting on thousands. These are clearly people who don't do Quantum. Talk said he wants Heaven on EO, Heaven on High, Potsherd, Frag change, but not the same as PT. I'm saying it doesn't make sense to have them all different ways to obtain them. It's funny because it's like... You know what's funny about that, Snack? The way you said it? It's like... You could put effort into something in the deep dungeon. That doesn't also mean that you all of a sudden put a lot of effort into how people obtain the item, right? It's like you put manpower and brain power into how people are going to get these things when you could have probably put that somewhere else. Hollow said, I'm surprised they didn't turn the potion into a duty action. Yeah, really? A lot of people wanted that. I'm not surprised, but that's fair. I think I used maybe 5 Pilgrim potions ever across 3 characters, but then again, I play Warrior. PT has been very bad for clogging up inventory space. It really has. Okay, so now I want to see this one. Display responses qualified as mixed, conditional, not truncated. I don't want to see what the mixed responses were here. I do enjoy having to farm them, but I thought in EO they were just a bit too rare. I'd like something in between. Wait, is this Cog right here? Number 1 response right there? That's exactly what he just said. Curious what the drop rates are since it felt like you barely... Yeah, this is definitely still fresh PT when we didn't quite sure, but we found that out later. I think it's okay to increase the drop rate, so the prep time for its solo run is so short and you can go and challenge yourself. Making them a duty action with charges would be better, since that would actually involve decision-making, but getting them irrelevant is the next best option. That's fair. That's fair. I like getting them through chests, but not only them later on. It's like weird English. Changes are good, but probably too many potsherds, potions already. I almost capped week 1. The regen potions should be the same potion for all 4. I'm in for universal. No potsherds from chests in 71 is a bit rubbish. This is not an American response. This was not done by an American, I can tell you that much. There's a lot of mixed. A lot of people were mixed here. I'm only saying yes in regards to Heaven on High and EO, as there's actually a use case for regens in those deep dungeons. In PT, I don't even need to start using regens until 60 plus set. That's fair. I'm okay with no potsherds in 71 because checkpoints are a thing. Yeah. Me too. Me too. That's a balancing act that they did, so... I think it feels fine the way PT does it. Don't care either way if they retrofit the other deep dungeons to follow. Since I don't have a strong opinion, I think the newer changes do help people prep for tries quicker, so it was ultimately a positive. Yeah. That's fair. Okay, so that was pretty good. That was a pretty good mix of responses there. But I would say, what is it? Most of them were overwhelmed. Like, most of the responses were more on the positive side of things than the negative. But I was definitely interested to see what the negatives were. And those are very good points, by the way. What people said. You know, it wasn't just, oh, it's shit. Like, it's like, these are the reasons why, and those are very good responses. I wonder if the mix is due to the jobs people played. Yeah, probably. Like, who is it here? Nemi? Nemi's warrior, didn't use potions. I mean, yeah. If you go conjurer, then I think you're gonna have a slightly different response. Right? Like a very specific individual. Okay, so here the next question was, and this is still in, was this the combined, or was this the vet? No, this is still the veteran portion, I think. So I asked, what do you think of the Aether Pool leveling changes in PT? Hey!
Survey this. Middle finger emoji.
Middle finger emoji. Oh my god, one more month for Sig? Uh-oh. Sig, what are we gonna celebrate for 69? What do you think? In January, when I'm playing more Path of... What am I doing in January? Oh, I might be playing, I'm gonna be playing, probably Arc Knights in January. Look at Sig trying to relive his youth right there. Thank you for that continued support, man. I appreciate it. Okay, so yeah, so what do you think of the Aether Pool leveling changes in PT? Again, this was an interesting question because it's like, first and foremost, do you even know that there was a change? Because, I mean, I noticed that there was a significant change, right? I think I noticed it right away, stepping into, what, 31? Or 30? Or 29? Or 21? So vast majority of you guys... Well, actually, not a vast majority. Just a little over half, 63% said you liked it. But a good chunk of you guys either didn't care or didn't notice, which is fair. 32%. Because it was subtle. Because I don't think I noticed it right away that I was getting +2 instead of +1, right? So in essence, the Aether Pool, what actually happened, if you don't know, was that the Aether Pool leveling was sped up by like 50%. Like it was just 50% faster, like straight, because you got 2 per chest at a certain point over 1. So thanks, Paula. Dang, maybe I'll go with that one.
6-7.
Thank you for that 23 months of support. I appreciate it. And then we did the follow-up question. Would you like to see the Aether Pool adjustments in Heaven on High EO? Okay, so we talked about the pod shred, right? Some of you guys are kind of on the mixed side. Some of you guys are like good for it. But what about the Aether Pool adjustments? Did you like it in PT, and did you want to see it in Heaven on High and EO? I'm asking you guys too, if you want to respond, but I'll also read what's in the survey. The same percentage said yes. 22 said they didn't notice, and no, 15% of you people wanted it to stay the way it is. People are weird. But, actually, yes, weird, because EO, this was the pain point of EO. That Aether Pool having that issue in floor 1, that's one reason that made it impossible to solo floor 1. Okay, so let's take this one. Aether Pool, if you further comments, and Aether Pool, okay. Close this, go here. Eight Aether Pool changes. Alright, let's bring it in. New chat. Here, Aether Pool changes. Okay, so now we're going to ask display responses of Aether Pool changes, positive and negative in a frequency. I think my responses was the same for both questions. If you actually get new people to do the content, sure. If not, leave it alone. That's fair. I guess that would have to come down to what that's hard to see, right? Because that is where like a survey would come into play. Like, what do people actually think? Were these all in one? This felt like this was one response here. Hate, awful, pointless, boring, stupid, flawed, overdid it, 1. Oh, 1 each, okay. Okay. Okay, so now, display negative responses not truncated. So I'm interested to see what the negatives... I mean, the positives are obvious, right? Yeah, we like them. Okay, cool. I dislike grinding for things in any game, so getting 99 is just a waste of time in my opinion. I know it's super easy to grind 99 PT, but since that's the case, it's an even bigger waste of time. Just make the highest level the default value, then... Does the on-screen not show you gameplay typing? No, because this is on the other... this is... No, not that. This is the in-game. This would be the in-game, so I'm not typing in-game, I'm typing on the streaming PC. What's up, Darth? Good to see you. Just delete Etherpole. Does anyone... Okay, chat. Does anyone enjoy it as a mechanic? Quick. Yes or no? This commenter is saying... It was miserable to solo EO with no pots and Etherpole. I banked on getting a Magicite and 410 boss, and low Etherpole makes setup way slower. Having an excruciating long 21 to 30 also does not help. Delete AP, not my comment though. Yes, I enjoy it. Honestly, no, it's a chore. Perhaps Potsherd suspend on Etherpole weapons as only other case I can see, maybe. Deleted, yes. So you guys are... So chat's more in favor of getting rid of it. Chat's more in favor of getting rid of it, which is interesting because, of course, that wasn't the question I asked, right, in the survey. It wasn't about did you like it or not. I just asked, did you notice it and did you think it was good? So it's like a different question, but you're indifferent to AP. I think my only thing I dislike about it is kind of something that Ross always mentions that I agree with him a lot. It's the fact that Final Fantasy XIV is definitely hard bent on the idea that they want you to go through this journey of leveling and becoming stronger, but in reality, it only matters when you're at the end game. That you're really only doing content when you're at level cap, or Aetherpool cap, or in Occult Crescent, you're at the cap of the job, then you could actually do content. And that part of that annoys me, because it does kind of mean the journey is kind of senseless in a way, because you're just doing it for the grind, but it's almost like you could, in my opinion, you could still do it in such a way where that grind is kind of worth it, right? I mean, man, like I'm so PoE 2 in my brain because that's the one I most recently did, and I feel like it's the most adjacent to Deep Dungeon because of the roguelite and the RNG and everything. But like I segment, excuse me. I segment my levels in PoE 2 as its own experience. I don't just look at endgame and the rest of it before then as a wash. Like, there is a segment from like level 1 to 16 in PoE 2 for Act 1 that I need to play very differently to get through. Then you have this segment of like 16 to about, I think it's like 28 in Act 2. You play that very differently based on the enemies that you fight. Then you have a segment of like 30 to like 40 something in Act 3. Like each one has this like very specific journey that you have to go through based on your level. But in reality, when it comes to, say, Deep Dungeon, you don't have a very distinct journey when you have Etherpool at 10 or Etherpool at 50. All you're looking at is, let me try to get it up as fast as possible because I'm just killing things slower. Like, that's it. Like, that's the only thing. Like, there's no adjustment to the experience. There's no new mechanic. There's no this or that. It's just part of the thing that you have to do, and then you can finally start going through the content at full cap, right? So, I don't know how they would do it in Final Fantasy XIV, but it would still be kind of cool that had more of a meaningful journey than just doing it, so. Levels playing field for people that don't raid, fair. Yeah, that's true, but I think they could still do it in a more meaningful way, but if they take away Etherpool, I would have much less fun. But it isn't necessarily taking it away, right? We're not just saying delete it and then not have anything in place. I mean, if they have something that just becomes more to it, then I think I would be good. But delete element levels from Eureka. Yeah, that actually is a little bit closer to like Path of Exile in a way, because you can only do 1 to 20 in the first one in Anemos and then onward. But it's just stopping by to say Project Oops killed my Dragoon score in PT earlier because you can in fact get in Dragoon. What did you do? I never explicitly say that you can never get the tail swipe. I just said I couldn't do it. What did you do to do it? I'm actually very curious. Did you, like, backflip out of it or something? Or did you stun it, then backflip and get massive distance? Because I heard that, like, Willow said that he slept one, he was behind it, woke it up, and then immediately did it, so... That is kind of Velvet vibes. Okay, let's go through this one. This was the Aetherpool negative. Outdated system. Aetherpool grips should be an extra clear reward, similar to how ultimate totems work. The existence of checkpoints in this deep dungeon means that there is no reason they cannot be an ending reward. As someone who doesn't even care about Aetherpool weapons either, it just feels like another statistic to grind out and never think about again. I'm kind of with that comment. Having 81-81 to go above 71 is stupid considering how baby the upper floors are anyways. I like these negative responses. It's an outdated system. AP is an awful system. Aetherpool is a depreciated old concept. I hate Aetherpool. It's an actually outdated is a lot of the frequent parts of here that is mentioned here. I kind of don't get why they even bother with Aetherpool. Why not just have it maxed from the start? Balance potent properly around that and make the weapons a different frequent occurrency. Now, just to review, by the way, this is all the negative responses, right? But here, through this one, let me close this, right? Through this one, right? Most people thought it was great. 62% thought it was great, but based on the 141 responses of people giving a short answer, you had 87 of them, more than half, and over 3 times the amount of people happy with the Aetherpool changes, right? So I think the negative responses are very interesting to see because they are very much valid, like in terms of their explanation, right? And not just like I hate it, it's stupid. I mean, even an outdated system as a response, in my opinion, is a good response because that's fair, because it is a very old system that hasn't changed at all over time, outside of how much you get or how little you get. It hasn't evolved. It's a mechanic that just is what it is. Honestly, I would take an evolution of the mechanic, right? That would be cool. That you would change around the mechanic as you do a different deep dungeon. I hit a luring, 3 Dahawks came out, I backed off and let them come to me, 1 breathed, so I ran behind it and got swiped. Interesting. You didn't take a video of it, did you? Corel text attack on solo I got after, yes, and well, actually the one for the cat Nemi is fascinating because the Corel will do a telegraph in an interval. I'm gonna throw a timer at that. Let's just say 15 seconds. So on that 15-second mark, it will then go through an if-then statement of whether something is behind it or in front of it. Like unlike some other mechanics where, like, let's take the Vinthirds in EO 41 plus, where, like, if you happen to run it behind it at any point, it can use elbow drop, right? But in this case, it's not gonna do that unless you actually get it on the right cycle for it to use it, because it will just pick one or the other. That's what makes it interesting to me. Maybe it was bugged in the idea that there were multiple monsters and they thought the friendly... if you think of it as a resource to be spent to acquire weapons, it makes more sense. Now, if only I wanted PT weapons. Yeah, also fair. I agree with Finn that it should start at 0 on all runs you are playing, and you are playing around what you get that run and tuned around like Sheeran. No video, sadly, but I don't have shadow play. Okay. Miran, that also makes me think of like a Hades situation too. Hades, essentially, you always start at base. Now, you do have a rogue-like feature to it, where like your meta progression will increase, so you're technically getting stronger in the back end. But I would like that, where like you actually, first and foremost, you don't balance it around having full Aetherpool. Like, if anything, you look at it. If you look at that idea, having 99.99 is almost overpowered. But you would get like an average of, let's say, 60. Like 60 would be base value of clearing a thing, but then you have other features that would help you clear it, maybe like 40 or maybe like 30, right? Because that's a more complicated system, but that would be kind of how I would like it too, where like you would just get more interval Aetherpool, so you would give Aetherpool more value. Like you would look at a +1 as this massive upgrade as opposed to a means to an end, you know? If Aetherpool changed how I approach each run, I would appreciate it more. Also, guys, you know, keep talking these ideas, okay? So go up on YouTube. Maybe someone reads it. Okay. So we went through Ether Pool. Now here we go into the next section of combining the solo clears, right? So now this isn't just veterans. This isn't just newbies. This is everyone together and asking more generalized questions, okay? I would really incentivize using palm generation stuff too to get more silvers instead of people sitting on that stuff all around. Yeah. I was actually mentioning earlier, Mirren, that I feel like the problem is, like, if you take what PT is with the Pomander system, I feel like it is what it is. But I feel like the Pomanders themselves just don't fit appropriately to PT. Like, they just slapped it on later. Like, if you change the Pomanders and PT completely, but you kept PT the way it is, you could probably have a very, very different Deep Dungeon. But that I felt like it felt outdated. I don't think Pomanders as a system is necessarily outdated. I think the Pomanders that they utilize is outdated. If that makes sense. Like, I would not necessarily mind Pomanders staying in, say, Deep Dungeon 5, but overhaul the entire system and do something different with what we do with Pomanders. Don't just stay married to Strength, Steel, Fortune, Affluence, Flight, so on and so forth. Yeah, but what did Haste do? It took away from the floor enchantments and they just shoved it into a Pomander. Like, to me, that's just kind of the best term I could learn is just lazy, you know? Why not create a new mechanic? Okay, so we asked solo runners, what do you think of the overall Deep Dungeon aesthetics? 60% of you thought it was your favorite looking Deep Dungeon. 37 thought it was not bad. Only 10 of you actually hated it. The hell was that sound? Okay, so let me see what data point we can find from this one. I did like not having ability. Yeah, but it's like they could have replaced it with something else, but whatever. They wanted to ease it up, I suppose. Alright, so what do we ask here, guys? What do you want to find out with this one? Let's do display most common terms describing... I can never spell aesthetics. Floors, like, purity, desert, nice. Nice. Strong positive tone. Words like, great, love, great, best, nice, good, and beautiful dominate. Desert appears 71 times, often paired with repetition complaints. Too much desert overstays its welcome. So most of you... Okay, interesting. Early floors are consistently praised. Last floors are the most decisive. Strongest comparison to the other deep dungeons. Interesting. Desert. Too much desert. Display responses describing desert and split into positive and negative with frequencies. Desert floors were dope, but followed by desert. Desert floors were dope, but followed by desert with Goopa's lane. Based on all desert-related languages, Amarang, Sand, Arizona, Dunes, Open Desert, Sunbaked. Who's saying... I could find out. We can see how many people said Sunbaked. Negative critical desert responses. 15 mentioned too much desert. Overstates its welcome. Boring and tiresome says 12. 10 mentions of overuse versus lack of variety. Should have shown more of Noval instead of Amarang. That's true. Oops, all Amarang. That's funny. Too many floors. And, you know, this is interesting. I did hear people talk about this, that they felt like there were way too many floors for the desert. But also, like, that was typical Deep Dungeon splitting, right? Because, I mean, 41 to 80 is that section where you see those floors. So, I mean, that wasn't going to change. Amarang is a little harsh visually. Not a fan of the... Yeah, I did hear this one, that it was too bright. So that is common as well. While fewer, some players specifically like the desert. Outdoor Deep Dungeon is a very nice change. Nature felt really nice. be hearing like the wind blow in your face or something. Nice change. Like the uniqueness of the desert. The sun was still nice. Felt like exploring. See, that was kind of cool. I agree with that one. It did feel like exploring. Wide rooms were interesting. Overall balance. More negative towards positive on the desert. I finally turned the contrast down on my monitor because I have the same issue with the 40 floors of caves in EO. Actually, I enjoyed the caves in EO. I just didn't like the music, but I actually really liked the caves in EO because I thought there was a lot of thought put into it. Knew we need to get fresh air, so he made us go outside in Deep Dungeon. He did. I'm on the side of the desert being good, regardless of how big it is, and frustrating when trying to score. It's like, it's very, but it feels like EO. I mean, I guess maybe there's also that mix, right? Maybe people didn't spend that much time in EO, so that's also fair. Okay, let me do this one again, but we're going to do... where's the split here? Let's do it describing the last floors. Because I don't know if it'll properly do it where I'm like 81 plus. Oh, it is, because apparently it's smart. Okay. Most recurring complaints: boring, underwhelming, uninspired, too dark, and bland. I said on stream I would live in 81 to 100 IRL. Worse than POTDEO. Reuse Palace copy. Would you guys agree with that? Would you call it a Palace copy? Because I would actually call it more Heaven on High copy than a Palace copy. Boring, disappointing, uninspired. Last 20 floors were disappointing. But this could be also, like, in general, not just aesthetics, but, too dark, ugly, visually weak. 81 plus is way too dark. Ugly as hell and unimpressive. Not as good as POTD or EO last zones. Yeah, okay. Reminds me of Palace. Positive. Cool, creepy, gothic, void, horror vibe. Enjoyed darkness. Excellent 100 floor. Like the castle mansion look. Some thought it was still beautiful or unique. I can't tell you just how much of a relief it was for me when I got to 81. Yeah, maybe, JC. Yeah, maybe that's true. My thought was Heaven on High with the lights turned off. Yeah, because of the way that it was, like, walled and everything. That's why I thought Heaven on High. Last forest is supposed to be dark and creepy. What the? Yeah, well, you know. I love the void theme of the last forest, but that might be... So you guys disagree with the... Wait, what is the positive split here? More negative on that one. And less positive. Wow. So you guys in chat like... Yeah, I liked it more. Horror vibe, nice boss. Now, bear in mind, this is off the basis of the fact that most people did like it, right? I think it was mostly positive for it in general. Because if I go back to the survey here... yeah, like 60%. So, yeah. And I wonder if, like, this 30% was also because, like, those were the negative parts of them. But most of the people kind of thought it was pretty good. Actually, no. It was actually a high bit of it kind of liked it. Not necessarily the best of it, but, like, 37% thought it was not bad. Yeah. As to do the contrast after coming out of the 40. It could be. I mean, I was fine in my very fancy OLED monitor, but... Hey, Tyrion, thank you for the 10 months. I appreciate it. Okay. Before I get to this next section, let me take a small break here. I'll take an ad break, but I'll also actually step away, because I don't want to do too much... I don't want to do that much of the survey when, like, people are in ads. So let me take an actual break. We'll come back, we'll look at this, and then we'll continue. So thank you guys for watching. Let me close this out, and then we'll continue when I get back. So BRB in a minute or two once we do the ads. Yeah, I'm very excited. We're gonna get through the solo portion of it, then we will get through the party portion of it, which I think will be an interesting contrast. And granted, I will understand if, like, the party part of the survey won't be as exciting to maybe the guys like you guys who are doing it solo. But here's the thing that I think is very, very important to see. A lot of us have this impression of the survey that they wanted to pull a lot of people into the content. So what did they do? They put Quantum in there. So did that actually mean people got brought into the content, right? What did they think? I asked very similar questions about aesthetics and fun and all these things to the people who did in the party. So I'm going to be very interested to see how that differed from the solo experience, and did Quantum actually bring people in, right? All right, so let's continue the survey, shall we? We get into the mechanics of the dungeon. What do you think of the votive mechanic? 90% thought it was good. 10% of you guys thought it was bad. Don't put it in future deep dungeons. This actually could be this question probably could have been asked differently too, because maybe there's a portion of you guys where you thought it was good, but actually should not be put in the next deep dungeon either, right? I feel like you won't see votives in Deep Dungeon 5. Because that was the PT thing. I kind of would like it, but also it needs its adjustments. How often did you use votives? Vast majority said yes. 0% did skipped it. Which honestly, this was a telling thing to me, because I originally came into the votives before it came out, thinking that it would be weighted in such a way where there would be a reason why you wouldn't take it, or a reason that it could possibly brick a run. And we of course found out that that wasn't the case, because there was never a time when a votive would actually kill your run, right? Unlike to the extent of, like, you know, walking into 199 in Palace of the Dead, knowing that there's a possibility that a no item can show up, and you picking whether or not you use a rage or not, because you don't have a Serenity. Like, not even close to that level of a decision. And when you have that in front of you, then it's like, this is kind of the easiest decision of your life, right? So this is gonna be a hefty response, 335. So let me see if we can find a good data point here. Okay, display responses split into positive and negative and with frequencies. Combine positive frequencies as a total number, as well as negative frequencies. Display the word. We could do that too. I could do that too. Let me just see the first one. That would be funny to do that too. Estimated positive frequency 120 responses of 337. Negative responses critical, unbalanced, flawed. Being too powerful, not enough risk, negative response. Okay. 120. Oh, this was split. 120 to 90 negative. Overall positive enjoyment, but negative imbalance in design. See, that's interesting because most of you guys used it, and most of you guys thought it was a good mechanic, but of course this was the one that I was interested in, was like, what did you actually think of the mechanic, right? And I mean, I'm with the more the hard into the negative side of, like, I mean, yeah, the balancing was weird. So let's see. The positives ones were very fun. I love the Gamba randomness with votives. Great addition, very cool, adds nicely to the roguelite experience. Debuffs were never mattered, it was never a choice. There was zero risk in taking the votives. Risk reward was horribly lopsided. They were way too overpowered. In practice, they just ended up being unconditional boons. But I did like that they made floor to floor different between. Yeah, I mean, I think the idea is still good. It could definitely take a lot more balancing though, but it definitely was a good idea overall. It's just, I mean, I agree with here, right? The debuffs never mattered. There was zero risk. Like, the risk should have been much, much higher. No real decision making, yeah. Debuffs easily countered with Pomanders, making floors too easy, trivializing danger. And yeah, I agree with all these negative points. I mean, the positive ones, right? Fun, love them, great. Like, these are like, this whole thing I agree with, right? Is that they were a good addition, but they could have been better. I'd like to see them again, but Mudball, Bomb. Wait, is Cog here? Cog, what if Cog was here? What is Cog's thingy? What do you call what did he call the primordial flesh? I forgot the term that he used. Muddy Buddy? So let me see here. Hold on. Let's do a new one. Display amount of times Muddy Buddy, Mud Ball, Ball, Poo, poop ball appears this like that's it. We'll just like I don't know if I do it more than that, right? Because I don't know how you would explain the votive system. Muddy Buddy 0 times. Mud ball, mud ball, mud ball 15 to 20 times. Poop ball is the best thing in this video game. Poo balls are super fun and ridiculous. It was mentioned 5 times. Ball in general was mentioned 40 times. Ball, fire, rolling ball, ball is the best. Poop ball during dung ball. Mud ball. There you go. 0 Muddy Buddy. Tell that to Cog. Hey man. Hey, what's up, Orion? Pretty good. We're going over the survey at the moment, so... Alright. So I think that was clear enough. I don't think there's any more that we can pull from the votive. Pretty much a good kind of, consensus on that one. So, was watching the guide to clear 110 for the... Oh! Ooh. Congratulations, 110. That's huge. Let's go, dude. Alright. No, it isn't, because no one said it. Look. See, look at this. Ready? Muddy Buddy, 0. You didn't even say it. You didn't even call it that in the survey, so it doesn't exist. Good try. Okay, next one. What do you think? Only way to go is down? Yeah. That's because I didn't do the survey. Damn. That's your fault, man. You could have set a precedence and you didn't. What do you think of the Haste Pomander? 61% thought it was okay. 33% thought it was great, and 25% thought it was bad. Okay. So here we go. Let's see what you guys thought of the Haste Pomander. Display responses of positive and negative with frequencies. Combine. Can't spell frequencies. I still can't spell frequencies. Oh, I cannot spell frequencies. Holy moly. Combine positive frequencies as one number and negative frequencies as one number. Killing a flaming drake resulted in a flaming poo ball was missing. I think that was very oddly specific, but so positive responses were 79 and negative responses were 141. Break this down by neutral mixed as well. Positive. Wow, that changes it big time. So positive were 144, negative were 40. Mixed both positive and negative language, neutral. You can break it down by job and class mentioned. Display responses, display mixed responses, not truncated. I haven't done any DPS applications, but it seems like a worse strength in my opinion, since it can be debuffed by the gremlin. It's very specific here. Well, it didn't make me feel much stronger. I feel like having another buff palm aside from the strength, I liked having another buff palm, okay? Felt like worse strength, and I just stack it with strength every time. More speed, more deeps. Excellent Pomander, weakest of the buffs for sure. Interesting, you know, this is actually not how I would necessarily see it. I mean, a lot of people here kind of just talked about how, like, its usefulness, as opposed to generally speaking. Like, did you like the palm in general? They kind of explained it in the usage of it, which is fair. Neutral responses, not truncated in chat. Just never noticed any significant power increase. Never noticed a difference with it on. It serves the same purpose as strength. I don't see the point of it other than taking a palm slot. Okay. It's a buff and it's fine. Absolutely broken. I don't know why this palm is party-based. Oh, that's true. But that, I mean, if you're talking about a party. But that's fair. Wish haste 1 gave movement speed 2. Well, now you're asking too much. It's basically a less impactful strength that you can also stack. It was also very much better on some jobs than others. It's okay, it's not very exciting. Cool that it affects the entire party though, so it's a lot better in groups. But that's a factor that I kind of forgot about too. Okay, so I mean, the responses here are pretty much on its actual use, which is fine. Let me see this one. Display negative responses and not truncated. So what were people saying that they didn't like about it? It's nice, nothing particularly exciting. I just never noticed any significant power increase. Never noticed a difference. Boring, but I guess not bad. Didn't really make a difference. Absolutely broken. It wasn't game-changing. Basically strength underwhelming. Second, weaker strength, not interesting. Doesn't feel impactful. Too little difference. You know, this is fair because this is also like another way you can read this, right? The fact that it's kind of whatever, and it kind of leans into this idea that like, well, you could have just had something else, right? I mean, you know, think of like Rage, Lust, Conceal, Storm, Lethargy. Like even those have more impact of what it uses. And yeah, that's fair because this is a haste pomander essentially is kind of like it's just a weaker buff. Like it's a buff, it's a weaker buff, but it doesn't do any more dynamics other than just make your DPS more, right? Not as impactful as Frailty, not impactful, boring design choice. Yeah, I would very much agree with these negative responses. Yeah. Now, hold on. Display positive. I want to see what I want to scan the positive responses since most of them were positive. A lot of fellow responses should be weighted in half. If only they indicated rates. Haste has been a godsend. It makes one of my buffs when I buff up. It becomes one of my buffs when I buff up for the boss. Much prefer Storms was a lot more flexible in its uses. A new staple palm on power with strength and shield. Being a party-wide buff is a nice touch as well. Sort of like giving presence of mind to everybody. Very strong palm, especially in combination with strength. See, this is interesting to see kind of the variance of responses, right? You had people on the negative side being like, it's whatever, it doesn't do much. And then you had other people on the positive side being like, this is great. But this could also be determined on the job, right? Because right here, as a Black Mage and Summoner Enjoyer, I do love me some haste. Like, Black Mage haste is very good. Playing with haste is always fun, very strong. Multiplies with strength. It's alright. I like it much more in party clears. Casting faster always feels good. So, if anything, to me, this leans into fun. It's fun. So, the fun part is nice, right? So you had more fun with haste on. Now, mechanically speaking, you can argue whether or not that's good or not, right? Design choice, what it did to the deep dungeon. But this leans into fun, which is fair. I can totally see that. Okay, so let's continue. So now, the other one. Devotion Palm. What do you think of the Devotion Palm? Great. 54% thought it was great. 38% thought it was okay. 7% thought it was bad. Display positive and negative responses in a table. The game can handle a lower GCD. It should natively offer it instead of limiting GCDs for a limited haste reward. You want the game to be faster? Most common positives. Add strategic planning, 2-floor delay, fun, interesting, unique. Good replacement for Rage, Dread, and Petri. Strong, impactful later floors. Overpowered, trivializes content. Too delayed, awkward to use. Too rare or pointless. Removes intended gotcha, gamba tension. Poorly explained in tooltip. Poorly explained in tooltip. Yeah. Display frequencies, positive and negative, combined for each category. Oh, well, this is better, I suppose. So how many responses do we have? 291 responses. Okay. Floor wipe power. Basically a floor wipe. Overpowered trivializes most people, 72. Planning and strategy required. Awkward, clunky. Too weak, not impactful. Interesting. Unclear, bad tooltip. Also fair. It did not explain it very well. We had to explain it. Useless on 8 and 9, can be used effectively. It's viewed primarily as a floor wipe mechanic. Power level is the biggest concern. Planning requirement is the most appreciated design element, but also frustrates some. Yeah, the two-floor planning, two-floor planning I thought was really cool. That was an interesting addition to it, that you had to plan 2 floors later, so I do like that a lot. Okay, I think that's good enough for Devotion. Okay, so now we go to everyone's favorite pomander, Purification. So 80% of you guys thought purification was bad. I don't know why. 15% of you guys thought it was okay. And 14% of you thought it was great. What is wrong with you? Who said great? yeah, come. Yeah, it's time to reveal yourselves, guys. This was the day. This is the big reveal. Who said it? How many times did LOL or LMAO appear? Or similar variants appear? I didn't do the survey, but if I did, I would have said great for sure. You don't have to yell. Actually, not as much as I was expecting. Only 9, 7, haha, hee hee. I guess those are variants of LOL, isn't it? Okay. Display in a table positive and negative responses with frequencies. Negative 230, positive 18, mixed 16. Display positive responses, not truncated. I like the addition, but what's the point when the use is limited to a very rare amount of monsters? Gremlin was probably the only good use. I know everyone hates it, but it's nice to just slam it when you get silenced and not care remotely about you losing a resource. Great in a pinch for silence for pacify. Absolutely needed when you get cornered on time solo. What? How am I... What do you mean? How am I validating? Like, am I saying thank you? I'll say thank you later. Half the people that don't like the Pomander also said PT is too easy, and y'all want more impactful. Number 4 answer? Yeah. Great for when I'm stupid on the 80... yeah, also that was great for when I was stupid too. From a gameplay standpoint, I think it's important to have weak palms in the pool, and it has some niche uses. From a gameplay standpoint, I think it's important to have weak palms. So, do you think it's a good game design to have throwaway mechanics? Because this leads also into having a devotion show up on like 8 and 9. This leads into having bronze chests in like 71 plus. This leads into actually no, in the opposite end, silver chests don't give ether pull, so now they only explode and give incenses, right? So in essence, they took away that part of it. If it gave ether pull, like in the previous deep dungeons, then that's essentially like a throwaway mechanic. So like, do you guys like that idea of like mechanics just being there just to fluff up whatever? Because I don't know, I think I would like it to be a little bit more in depth and a little bit more dynamic, that every piece of the content has a purpose instead of it just existing for no reason. It's almost like the very basic argument of a beacon of return existing for solo runs. Right? It's just there, and then you never do anything with it, and it would be very fascinating if it actually had a reason for solo content. A very different reason. I mean, that would be kind of cool, but I don't know. Like, I know it's hard to design it in such a way because you're trying to create content that is meant for everyone, the very big term that they like to use, but it's still mechanics that essentially are wasting space, you know? Validating check or pre-validating something, that means demonstrate. Yeah, it's just giving me better information. It's just a portable Asuna. Don't see why it's a problem. Content is still difficult. It won't make or break a run. Like using them after I stepped on impeding traps, so I didn't have to spend 30 seconds staring at a mob. Honestly, while on the weaker end, it has some good uses. Can remove Doom on other debuffs. That like Doom in one instance. Don't need to carry even more outside consumables, casters from this palm. You know, okay, this part here. Don't need to carry even more outside consumables on casters with this palm. It's funny that you say that, because it would be interesting if you couldn't take it in to begin with, and then you had this Pomander. But you would still have to make more of an impact on the debuffs that are coming in. But that's an interesting point. Like, if you had more debuffs that didn't get removed by consumables, then yeah, it would have more validation, but I'm worried for time even on the earlier floors. It's a tough one, 110 plus, but you'll get used to it as you do it more. Do I use food belt for POTD? In which I believe in POTD, you can get anything up to like 540, I think, and you don't need anything higher than that because it maxes out. I believe. I usually use direct hit and determination. I think those are the higher weighted stats or secondary. But they could have added anything. They came up with an 8-minute warding payon. What does this even cleanse? One of the 2 debuffs of silence and a little goblin that shows up in your that slows your GCD. Mostly critical tone, but recognizes this effect, so I excluded this from the positive list. Interesting. Yeah, so like most of you guys, most of the responses here were like on the silence trap, on Doom, on like the very specific things that you probably get hit with, right? But you're talking of very small instances. Could have maybe done with 2 or 3 more good uses. Yeah, I mean at the very least. Great for melee tank, saved me from a wipe on 80 when my butt was barely outside the ring and I got paralyzed. Hey, it saved someone on 80, see? Return action teleporting you to the side of the room would be interesting. Something. Intuition makes you lots of money. Purity, yeah. To be fair, Purity is very specific, but that mechanic always... But see, therein lies the difference between that with Purity and Purification. Purity is something that is almost always present because you're always getting mimics. Unlike Purification where you're not always needing to use it, right? Like, you can always avoid a pacification trap, and you can always technically not pull a goblin or not pull the eyeball, but you can't skip a mimic half the time unless you don't open chests, which you can in PT, but even then, it's still a 1 in 5 chance. Okay, so yeah, I mean, we could already predict the negative parts of this one, but which is mostly negative. Useless, pointless, trash, waste of a slot, why does this exist? Worst Pomander, never used it, completely useless. I like how the positive is, I mean, it has some uses. It's very niche, but it has some uses. It saved my life once. I mean, yeah, it's positive. Alright. No surprise with the purification. No one liked it. I mean, generally speaking, like... I mean... Okay, here's a question for you, Cog, since you are clearly team purification. If you had a choice, would you have purification or literally anything else? You know what I mean? Like, if you had a choice of actually picking something other than that one, would you pick it? Was going in that slot wouldn't make the Deep Dungeon even more easier than it already is. Well, using what we know of now, for sure, but... I take an empty slot versus... Damn! Damn, just delete the slot, period, huh? Alright, that's fair. A sprint palm? Oh, now we remove sprint out of the pool? How dare you. What are your thoughts on juniper incenses? Okay, this one's gonna be interesting too. So, let me pull this one. Okay, what are your thoughts on juniper incenses? Take it off the vote and turn it into a palm? That actually would be kind of cool. I may not disagree with that one. How long do you want it for? 4 minutes or 8 minutes? I don't want the sound effect though. Like, get rid of the sound effect because the sound effect's irritating, but... Bonus points palm just gives you points. That's it. That's all it does. It just exists to give you points. Here, you died. Here, get 5,000 points. Display common words from responses. Wait, you guys can't see this, can you? No. Okay, let me see the common words for Juniper. Increase points for the floor. Ooh. Random palm uses 1 palm that you can grab in deep dungeon. Any deep dungeon? I want to see my rage Pomander show up. Alright. Top 30 most frequent words. Strong, like, to... Okay, that's not helping me. Break this down by sentiment. Pomander that increases your movement speed. Yeah, Snack was talking about that. To have the sprint, you just take the sprint palm out of the votive. Purification should have been a transfer palm. Take the debuff and give it to the enemy target. That actually would have been not bad. Okay, so... Interesting here. 206 had neutral, positive 188, negative 118. The community leans mildly positive towards Juniper incenses overall, very large portion neutral mixed. Display responses. Display negative responses in a table not truncated in chat. I would like the idea of enemies affecting other enemies. That would be kind of fun. Oh, like most of them are actually just one-word responses. I guess I'll go look at these ones. Okay. Seems like a mix between Heaven and High and EO, a bit too powerful, overpowered, too strong, basically demi-clones on crack, too strong. Maze Root is my least favorite, removes 4 enchantments. That's funny. Bark Bomb trivializes bosses, way too OP, far too strong, kills the tension, OP for this deep dungeon. Bark Bomb breaks bosses. Too generous, game-breaking at times, excessive, way beyond intended power. Poison equals instant win. Bark Bomb equals Onion Knight on steroids. Not earned power. Feels like a mistake. Overpowered system. Power fantasy at the expense of challenge. Sure. Ridiculously broken. Is that an Omni Ross in my chat? What's up, Mr. Omni Ross? Shoutouts to Omni Ross. Ross was doing more of his samurai challenge. Welcome in, guys. We're going over the survey. We're still going over the solo part of this. I haven't even gotten to the party, and I don't even think I'm going to get to it today, but it's fine. And what you walked into is we're looking at the survey responses about the Juniper incenses. He's playing a game instead of being a React streamer. Wow. Delete this, man. Why did he raid my channel? I can't believe it. Display not truncated. Display not truncated. Hope you had a good time. Are these answers from both? Yes, this is the combined new runners and veterans. Yes, this is the overall impression from the solo run. So essentially, you're asking the opinion after you've cleared, right? So, okay, positive responses part 1. I love them. I think technically they are weaker than Magicites, but I think all 3 are extremely powerful to use. I really like them overall. Love them. Barks should be a bit more rare, but fun. Every incense is strong. I liked it a lot. I enjoyed the variety. Maze Root on Bad Flows is very satisfying. Fayul, my beloved. Very creative, each one of them. Way better than demi-clones. Ooh, do you guys think Junipers are way better than demi-clones? What do you guys think? Parked at 70, 71 plus for tomorrow, doing a bit of less deep dungeon since there's PvP matches tomorrow, not trying to overcook. Oh yeah, yeah. And you got PoE soon. You don't think they're better than demi-clones. Way too OP. So you'd rather have Une over Fayul. That's what you're telling me. Better than Magicite. Similar strength. They're fun to use. Interesting. I like variety. Okay, so going back to the top of this. This was... Where was the frequency? Okay, here we go. So it was this was pretty much down the middle, kind of. Mostly were positive about Junipers, a lot were neutral about it, and the negative was only 118. So mostly positive, negative, which just kind of follows along the lines of like the actual one. I didn't have it survey for it, but that checks out. Okay. Alright, so let's get to here, right? Did you utilize checkpoints to help you progress towards your solo title? 50, this is the thing that surprised me. 53% said no, they didn't checkpoint, always started from floor 1. Which I almost don't believe that that's a thing, but... Because you had to, like... Unless you don't consider 99 a checkpoint, then... Yeah, I don't know. Would you like to see similar checkpoints in older deep dungeons? Most people said yes. With only 26% saying no. If you have any other thoughts concerning the new checkpoints, let me know. Alright, so let's do display responses in a table, positive and negative, and display frequencies. Let's see what this goes with. Also, thank you everyone for joining me. I hope you're having a good time. It's like one of the only streams I'm actually sitting here and discussing things, but I think this is worth a discussion. Okay, so this was less negative. I want to see the negative. Display negative responses not truncated. I think the positive... Well, I would like to skim through the positive. I hate the new checkpoints a lot. Take POTD for example. Most of the appeal of Behemoth comes from the fact that you fight for even the chance to fight that high. That's exciting and it's completely absent in the newer Deep Dungeon. Feels the checkpoint system made the deep dungeon easier overall, so I dislike it. Checkpoints make it too easy. For the community, it's probably better they exist, but it made clearing far too free. Free! They killed part of the fun and tension for me. Takes away from the challenge, also makes getting the mount too easy since you could just spam 71 to 100. That's why they made it 8 times, right? Get rid. The old deep dungeons felt more meaningful because of the investment you have to make climbing the floor. You don't see how checkpoints make it free? Whenever anyone says free, the way I explain it is that if it's free, then I could sit here and not hit buttons and I'm going to win. So, if it doesn't do that, then it's not free. I much prefer deep dungeons without any checkpoints. I like roguelites because you always have to start over. I don't like the deep dungeon lost that aspect. This will invalidate my Necromancer Lone Hero titles if they implemented into old deep dungeons. This gamer is very salty. I don't hate the idea of checkpoints, but it feels very strange to have a deep dungeon where you're able to start at so many points. While I think new checkpoints are making deep dungeon easier, it is welcome change for casual players. Still, I kind of dislike checkpoints 70F. The higher checkpoints shouldn't be given any rewards like sacks. They should only be checkpoints to train the higher floors. You know, this was an interesting thing. Here's a question I'd like to ask you guys, and maybe we get to it because of the thingy, but did you guys like 99 in relation to the checkpoint? Because I had a couple of responses that they loved 99 because of the checkpoint, but then I had alternate responses where because it was designed around a checkpoint, they actually hated the fight. Which is all fair. They're worth this, though. This might have been a response where you didn't know that beforehand, you know? Like, you may assume that the higher floors had a higher stack, so that's fair, right? If 99 was not a checkpoint, I would still be probably my first clear. I hope that one guy never watched a single video stream to get his titles, otherwise he's invalidating someone else's title. Yeah. The boss does a dot or whatever and made solo learning without pointers suck. But like the argument that was made, which I thought was a fair argument, I don't know, I'm indifferent to this, was 99 existed the way it was designed because a checkpoint existed. So you could argue that if there was not a checkpoint, that boss would not be designed such a way. And you could see that both in like a good and a bad, right? And I honestly don't know how I would think about that. But I can see how, like, it was irritating to some people that you designed a boss that was meant to die and meant to prog it. But you still had to go through, especially if you're only going solo, that you had to run through that boss to die to it just to get it unlocked. And that was my plan, right? My plan was to get to 99, immediately die, and then practice it. Because that was baked into the strategy, but, you know, was that a good implementation of it? What's cool for farming the 8 clear amount, but besides that, it kills the sack grind. Checkpoints are fine, but I despise the 8 to pull requirement for each set. Not really a fan, it removes the excitement when you finally reach the last floors. It casualizes the entire deep dungeon and removes tension. For solo, I dislike checkpoints, they lower the overall difficulty ceiling. Summarize the positive responses. Main themes of positive feedback. Massive quality of life improvement. Most users explicitly call checkpoints the best or an long overdue quality of life feature. Now bear in mind, the negative responses was only 21 out of 266. So the positive bits of the checkpoints was overwhelmingly positive in terms of the short answers. So I don't get the argument how checkpoints make it easier. You can still shrink together a 1 to 100 to get you still start shrink together. Yeah, I can understand the idea that you would think that the dungeon is all of a sudden easier because checkpoints exist, based on what Ross said. Now, I do feel like there is an idea that prior to the Deep Dungeon releasing, that people already had that impression. Because you're putting in checkpoints, you're automatically making the Deep Dungeon easier, which wasn't necessarily true, although it kind of is. So yeah, you can kind of draw that correlation that because because PT is considered easier, and based on this survey, it was because most people said it was. The checkpoints is a cause of that to be the case, right? So then you could come to that conclusion why that would be. I don't necessarily think that, and that was my argument that you still had to run 1 to 100. But the response here, right? Going back to this response here, I hate the new checkpoints a lot. Take PUTT for example. Most of the appeal of Behemoth comes from the fact that you had to fight for even a chance to fight that high. That's fair. That whole vibe of like you had to spend all this time to get the Behemoth, etc. But that can still be an argument one way or another. I mean, in the extreme case of POTD, one issue and pain point you had was people would be like, oh, you know, it takes like 10 hours to get Behemoth. I mean, that already takes people out of it. They don't even get to experience what Behemoth is because they think it's too long of a journey. And you could argue that having a checkpoint probably to see Behemoth and practice it would then give you more motivation to actually do the content and to spend the time to run up there. But again, you can make an argument for either way. And that's kind of one thing that you think about PT was that, okay, you had these checkpoints and now you had the experience to do them. So you actually felt more like you could actually do the dungeon as opposed to not do the dungeon. But these are fair points. Like, I understand where that's coming from to an extent, right? I mean, I may not necessarily fully agree with it, but I understand why it's coming from that point of view. It makes it easier to get information, and since the dungeon is heavily knowledge-based, the checkpoints help a lot, especially blind prog. Why spend 4 hours to see a mob when he might kill you again when you could checkpoint to see it less, see in it less, or bosses, yeah. The idea is that you can checkpoint to a specific spot or close to it. You can learn it faster because it's faster to learn. It's more approachable. If it's more approachable, then those who have given up won't give up. It makes it easier to gather information to learn, regardless of whether the idea has validity. That's the thought process. Getting 2 stages to 71 to me was a progging machinist with 200 mm was definitely part of the experience for me. I just don't think a lot of people are built that way, Falf, and that's what sucks, right? And to an extent to the journey. But that's kind of the player base that you're working with. And again, I mean, if I had to pick between people requiring that run-up to have that experience over just doing it at all, I mean, I think SC would want to just have people actually do the content than just not do the content. What's up, Listless? Honestly, I'd take, says Amli, I'd take floor 100 starting point in POTD. I'd do it a lot more. 51 and 100 is very boring. You're the perfect case study as well for that. Amelie, like you essentially represent a lot of people who have that thought process, right? It's that you don't want to go through this slog of a floor because you rather spend your time doing something else. And that's kind of where it comes down to your worth of your time. I like that they could make fights a little more raid-like and not an obvious since you didn't have to start over every time. And that leads into 99, right? Because 99 is in a way where you're going to wipe solo unless you, for whatever reason, just happen to get lucky with the mechanics. But, you know, you could design more fights like that with the checkpoint, but of course, you know, you had to make it kind of eased a little bit. I mean, in the end of most people having checkpoints, it is just a practical replacement for studying deep dungeon decks or watching VODs. Yeah, that's also true. I was actually going to make that point too, Zway, was that, what was your option, right? And this was actually the argument I made about a checkpoint in 99 over a checkpoint not having a checkpoint in EO. So, if you didn't have a checkpoint in 99 in PT, what was my course of action on stream? Which is what I did in EO. I would get up to 99, I would try to live as long as I can, and then I would review my VOD. Because it would take me, 6 hours to get there, right? If you didn't have checkpoints. That's what I did in EO. We ran up 7-8 hours to get to 99. I tried to survive as much as I can. I looked at my video as much as I can, and I went there. But what did I do instead in PT? I unlocked 99. I barely did VOD review, and I just rammed my face to 99 until I figured it out. And you can, again, those two versions have both positive and negative. But for sure, I definitely enjoyed the idea of playing the game than watching the game to get my answer. You know what I mean? Like, I could run up there every 8 hours just to get an experience and never look at a VOD, but that to me is a waste of time. But having now the option to just play the game to get my information certainly makes me, you know, engage with the game more. In essence, you know, when you're talking about a game, you'd rather play a game than watch a game, right? Which is exactly what we're doing here, right? We're obviously playing a game and not reading a game. It's a survey, it's fine. I'm gonna make fun of myself doing React content. So yeah, I mean that's, you know, there's all points of that. It's just kind of what comes down to the vast majority of, I guess, what's better for the whole thing. And looking at the comments here, right, for the positivity, the summaries of the positivity, massive quality of life, excellent for practicing and learning, since I know what some of you guys pointed out. Makes Deep Dungeon more accessible. That is a very common theme, the accessibility. That's what we just mentioned about it, is that people can actually do the content because it's more accessible and not have to use all that time up. Improved group matchmaking experience, which also technically falls back into solo, because if you can see more of the content, then you feel more confident to do the content. Doesn't hurt solo clearing prestige, which is opposite of what the negative response was. Since the solo titles still require 100 full clears, checkpoints don't undermine prestige. They are ideal for practice without compromising the solo title. This made even hardcore runners more supportive. That's a positive feedback. Good for the game's long-term health, yes. Should I display it again? The people standing outside PT in like, what, almost a month and a half? Like, this is not bad at all, you know? So, I mean, it's hard because you do have kind of your thought process of like, you as the gamer, of how you engage with the content. So it sucks when your perspective is kind of hit, but it's still a business after all. They gotta hit a wider spectrum of people than just kind of a smaller amount. Either way, we are watching at this point, even if you're not playing. Sure. Yeah, you guys are stuck here for the next 2 hours probably. How many people outside of EO, if can, not good for my server? I don't think anyone's outside of EO ever. You saw one person? Look, looking in the mirror doesn't count, boss. Okay. Players overwhelmingly see checkpoints as time-saving, stress-reducing. And see, it's the stress-reducing I can argue, because this is part of the challenge, in my opinion, stress-reducing. Accessibility boosting features that improves practice and group play without damaging the prestige of solo players. Okay, so I think we got that covered. I saw someone in EO too, never mind, it was a Sprout waiting for CT. I'm standing there, there are 3 people standing here, get wrecked. Do you have video proof? No, but that is the good guess. Challenge log is enough incentives for remove the checkpoints. Really? No, if you remove the checkpoints, PT's over. Okay, did you practice the floor 99 boss with the new duty? 66% said yes at least once, which is counter to the fact that people did checkpoints. But whatever, it's fine. 13 said no. Are any of you gamers in chat that were like, no, I straight up went to 99 and cleared? I mean, maybe you looked at a video, but... Okay, this is the one I want to see. What do you think of the 99? I spent an hour and a half, I didn't kill it, and I sent it. I'm like, I think we're good, we're going in. I'm not spending 20 minutes on this fight. You read Meiji's guide? Oh, see, Meiji's guide was still... but her guides are great, though. Dang. My perspective is still from the blind perspective, so, like, I couldn't fathom the idea of someone getting up there without doing it. I think even with information, I think I would have panicked. I think I would have died at least once before I got it down. I have to see it. That's just how it goes for me. I have to see it. Display responses, positive and negative. So generally speaking, like, what is the question again? What did you think of the 90... Oh, it was specifically the duty boss action. Okay, the duty boss. I mean, I did specify that. Negative. Okay. Bad, useless rewards. Yeah, I did say that the 99 duty itself, right? Because I was interested in the actual duty. Content felt too raid-like for Deep Dungeon. Practice mode, removing tension. Bosses being too punishing blind. That's what I mentioned. Target switching and visual clutter. Did you guys like or dislike the fact that it was 2 targets? Feeling force tacked on unnecessary. Rewards are trash, shit, garbage. Doesn't fit in Deep Dungeon, over-designed. Kills attention, boring, too easy, too hard. What is the split? It was almost 50-50. Boss design mechanics, the ability to practice without rerunning 98 floors, challenge and raid-like feel, being fun to learn, visually impressive. Great fight, best Deep Dungeon boss. You liked the 2 target. I liked it if Bark didn't do damage to both. Fair. The reward system is by far the most consistent complaint. Cool idea, but I don't really care. Haven't tried it. Fine, okay, mid. Not bad, but not amazing. Both praise the mechanics and criticize the place rewards. You didn't like the HP percent was too high. The fact that it was a 20-minute fight without anything. That certainly was something. Okay, that was good. Again, if you guys want to see me dive into it deeper, you can always do that. Okay. Would you have liked a difficult post-deep dungeon fight like Quantum, except as an exclusive solo challenge? 85% said yes, 15% said no. Would you have liked a difficult post-deep dungeon fight like Quantum? I'm in the yes category. What do you think of the solo title Enlightened? Down the middle, 64%. 32% said least favorite. 11 people are wearing it right now. I could technically be one of them, but I'm just being lazy, not swapping back to Necromancer. Any final thoughts? Let's take this one, and I want to see commonality. I'll just do summarize the results. Let me do some summarize responses. I didn't spell responses right. I am, of course, yes, but I can see why a few people would say no for sure. Okay. Overall sentiment. Most people enjoyed the new Deep Dungeon PT and considered it fun, accessible experience, especially compared to Eureka Orthos. Especially compared to Eureka Orthos. At the same time, many veteran solo runners felt it was too easy and lacked attention, danger, and resource management of PT, of POTD, and Heaven on High. PT is widely seen as the easiest Deep Dungeon, especially for solo players. Enemies die too fast, even without steal, or defensive Pomanders, auto attacks, and crits felt weak. Floor difficulty ramps up at 51 to 98. Too many pass-fail mechanics instead of strategic checks. Requests, hard mode, quantum style modifiers for the dungeon itself, bring back harder debuffs, strong auto attacks, crits and more traps, scale enemy damage based on party size. I don't like. Scale enemy damage, then that's what variant is, and variant's awful for solo. It's not, I mean, unless they make it harder, but it's not good for solo. Quantum system reaction, almost universally seen as disconnected from Deep Dungeon's identity. People don't understand why it isn't soloable, isn't tied to Deep Dungeon run itself, has so many difficulties, poor rewards. Stronger desire. No, not necessarily that. If you scale it, then you're essentially designing it for, like, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, and they haven't proven that they can do that correctly. Well, in a challenging situation, because variant is very easy, so... Strong desire to instead apply quantum modifiers to the dungeon itself. Yep, that's a strong desire. Major frustrations with 30k Horde achievement being seen as tedious and unfun. Hordes being diluted with junk. Yep. Lack of meaningful rewards for Omni-clear, role-based clears, harder challenges. Weapon glows missing and locked behind unappealing systems. Positive reception for challenge log checkpoints and incentives for repeated runs. Yes. Big positive. New and casual players are actually engaging in Deep Dungeon now. Finally. They're seen as a gateway, easier to recommend to friends, more active in matchmaking. Praised. Theming and music, boss design, unique enemies, checkpoints, removal of no ability. I like how this is a major praise. Too many similar two solution mobs. Too many desert floors. Weak danger past 80. Too many currencies, trade in items, because that's quantum. Title Enlightenment seen as weak and underwhelming. A solo ultimate or hard mode deep dungeon as a suggestion. Quantum style sliders, more roguelike elements. Yeah, this is always there. I don't know how they could ever do this, but that would be kind of cool. A collected title for clearing all deep dungeons like ultimates, more meaningful creative achievements. 3 save slots. I thought that was coming in, it didn't show up. Overall rankings common viewed. Really? People thought Heaven on High is the best over... Okay, I want to dive into this more. Community enjoyed PT and appreciates its accessibility, quality of life changes, and creativity, but a large portion of dedicated Deep Dungeon players feel the challenge has been diluted. The rewards missed the mark. Identity of Deep Dungeon is drifting towards casual. If you like... Okay, that's fine. I like how pre-PT everyone was like, they need to do something new with PT. Oh my god, I can't believe they changed it. Because it's too much. Okay, I gotta hit an ad here. Ads are going out, and I want to dive a little deeper into this final summary. So, BRB, thank you for watching, guys. Let's get this ad out of the way. Okay. Literally the opposite. Okay. Explain overall rankings further. Let's go with this one. Okay, who the hell said gold standard and diluted this thing? The foundation. Okay, this is just... I see. This is just the AI saying this is what it is. Okay, sure. Yeah, exactly. The fun but easy one says... I like these explanations. The least enjoyable. Okay, let me see what this overall thing is. Cog doesn't like RNG. Display responses of overall rankings not truncated in chat in relation to summary. Let me see if I get another one past that one, and I'll read the one above that. Okay, so let me read this summary, and then let's compare it to the actual responses. So, Heaven on High, the gold standard. Heaven on High is remembered as the perfect balance of high tension, smart resource management, dangerous auto-attacks, crits, strong mob identity, real risk versus reward decisions. Why people rank it number 1. Enemies are dangerous even without big telegraph mechanics. Auto-attacks could kill you. You had to actively manage parameters, time, pull size, line of sight. Different role jobs had very different experiences with skill expression. Floors 80 to 99 were genuinely scary, which created memorable moments. Many respondents directly said Heaven on High was the last time they felt true stress and adrenaline in deep dungeon runs. Several people have said clearing Heaven on High is one of their most proudest achievements in the whole game. PUTD earns its spot because it's built the original formula, still contains the highest risk floors in the entire system, demands strong decision-making, brutal difficulty at the end, true resource starvation, memorable mobs, required alternative strategies, kite cheese, palmeter. Even people who disliked its grind admitted it still represents the peak of tension and stakes. That's an interesting one. But it lands slightly below Heaven on High because early mid floors feel slow and dated. Some mechanics are more RNG based than skill based. Why people like PT? Smooth pacing. Bosses are interesting. Unique enemies. Checkpoints removed from time commitment fear. Great gateway for new players. Too forgiving. Danger barely exists after floor 50. Missing panic moments. It is seen as more fun than EO, healthier for the game, but less meaningful as a solo accomplishment. That's fair. EO almost universally sits at the bottom. Enemies are extremely tanky. One-shot mechanics everywhere. Slow pacing, less creative progression. Progging feels like a chore instead of a journey. More tedious and challenging. Least fun to solo. Hostile to experimentation. Where's the EO crew to explain this, aside from COG? It felt punishing without being fun, and that makes it worse than being just hard. See, I actually agree with this. Because dying in EO felt so freaking annoying and frustrating than fun. Oh, oops, I hit a button. I don't know what happened, my hand slipped. Okay, so... Let me see, let's look at the actual responses, right? If Heaven on High is an easier PUTD, then PT is an easier EO. These are actual responses. Personally, I had fun with it, and so far it's my favorite deep dungeon of the bunch, but objectively speaking, I think some elements could be tweaked to be weaker for the challenge. PT is way more fun-tuned than the older deep dungeons. I prefer more difficulty, but EO felt more tedious and slow than difficult. So this one hit a more enjoyable balance, but I still think PUTD is probably the most fun one. This is PT is easier and sits below Palace and Heaven on High. Overall, pretty decent deep dungeon, while not as challenging as some would have liked. I hope it brings more people into the deep dungeon community. I hope so too. This is more fun to prog. I do think it was probably a bit too easy, but mobs didn't feel too tanky. Heaven on High is seen as superior. I cleared all ultimates and still feel proud of Heaven on High clear. Definitely an achievement I'm proud of. I was more stressed fighting a Flood Dragon and Warrior than any single mob on Machinist with the entire dungeon without steel. That's... I can't even argue that, right? I was more stressed fighting a Flood Dragon and Warrior than any single mob and Machinist in the entire dungeon without steel. Like, we can argue that. That's a fact. that's just a fact, right? We take every mob in PT and then throw someone in front of a Flood Dragon. Unless you're falling asleep, it's hard to fail. Damn. Did you hear that? I like the DPS race of Heaven on High PT. There should be a slight level of fear when you enter 81+. You should have it in your mind that you need to be at your A game. I feel like it's chill all the way through. I long for the day where we get a title for soloing clearing everything available. Necromancer will always be my favorite. EO was just a miserable progging experience due to everything one-shotting you. HP tuning for ads were way too high, not a big fan. EO, easier than PUTD, Heaven on High, and PUTD easier than Heaven on High. I am of the odd minority who thinks EO is both the best and most challenging deep dungeon of the bunch. Rare exception. Even that EO is best comment stands out exactly because it's so rare among the rest. I like how this just makes it even further. Oh my god. Yeah, COG didn't support the gamers. PT better than EO, obviously, despite being easier. For me personally, I find PT easier than EO. Key pattern response. Best design, most sterling, best solo experience. Iconic. PUTD iconic. Brutally hard, meaningful title. Fun, accessible, frustrating, overscaled, not fun. Okay, I think we got that through. That was fun. That was a fun one. Thank you for everyone sharing your thoughts on that one. If anyone in chat had done the survey. That was interesting to go through for sure on that bit. Okay, so now, again, even though this isn't solo clears, right? This is the party clears. And what's important about the party clears, in my opinion, is to think that this deep dungeon was supposed to help bring in more people into it because of quantum, etc. So what did those people think if they didn't do a solo experience, right? And how does it differ from our perspective as a solo runner? And this is one of the bigger ones that I'm always interested in, because I feel like there is definitely a huge divide amongst the people who solo the content and people who don't solo the content. You know? So this is where we're going to dive into this one now. So how big was your team? Light Party was the vast majority. You had a couple do a duo, and actually less do a trio, which doesn't surprise me. I would imagine you probably go with a buddy doing it. So vast majority did as a Light Party. How many... Okay, let's do this one. How many attempts did it take you to clear? I want to just see the frequency here. Open it so you guys can see it. Okay, let's see. Which is why it's my least favorite in general, as a side note from earlier. But you like PoE. So most was 2. 2 had 182 out of 500. 1 was 128, 120. Yeah, this is basically the same as solo. So we had to really put it there. So that doesn't surprise me. I didn't really think that was gonna be too surprising, but yeah, okay. Okay. Will you go for another clear? Most people at the time said yes, they want to go for the 4 mounts. 30%, 36% said yes, at least one more, and then a couple only said no, they don't want to, the 522. For the survey taker, is this your first deep dungeon clear? A vast majority said no, while a good chunk said yes. If yes, would you try to go for another deep dungeon clear? Right, so this would be the 21 basically responding and said yes, they would. Only a small portion said no, they're happy with PT. This is the one that I was kind of surprised with, right? Did you do Quantum after you cleared PT? 75% said no, they didn't. Now, bear in mind this was probably directly after you cleared, right? So there could be a possibility that a chunk of these people did eventually do Quantum, but essentially they did not go into it wanting to do quantum right off the bat. The 24% probably were the world racers, or people who did kind of get there. So this to me is a very interesting data point, because if your whole thing was that you were putting in quantum to pull people into Deep Dungeon in the assumption that Deep Dungeon was not as popular and you wanted more people to do it, you only got 25% of those people, if anything. And a good chunk of them were like world racers, right? So even less than that, because they're going to do the content anyway. So, I mean, this doesn't, of course, like decipher if the idea of quantum being there was enough, right? Knowing that it's there was good enough to work with. Because that could be a whole question in its own. Quantum is hype for people getting to do usability, and quantum is intimidating. Not surprised at those results. But something can be intimidating so much that you just don't end up doing it, right? I mean, maybe you hear the exit polls about what quantum is, and you're like, you know what, I don't want to do Deep Dungeon. But apparently it was enough for people to then do Deep Dungeon, because a chunk of these guys did their clear and got their party clear, just did not engage with quantum thereafter. I don't play for 14 outside of Deep Dungeon, so zero care. Yeah, I don't care. I don't care for quantum either. Do you have intentions of doing quantum 40 at maximum difficulty? So bear in mind that 75% of these people said no, they didn't do quantum. 50% of them said they're considering it. The 23% basically said yes, which is kind of what matches, right? I mean, the guys who did quantum basically did 40. 10% said they don't intend on doing it, and 14% said they're good, that they don't want to do. It's basically the same thing. Okay, let me know your overall impressions of quantum. This one I want to see. Okay, let's see this one. We'll split it on positive, negative again. Maybe I do finish the survey today. That'd be great. I can actually get back to Paladin on Monday. 19 party quantum thoughts. I'm saying the hype for quantum got people thinking big and talking to their friends about it, but not following up with the intent at all, and I see classic behavior. I would still think, though, like, it still is a win that they actually still at least took, you know, the step into it, right? I mean, if it takes 2 steps, they at least took 1 step, so that's not bad. I mean, a lot of people do talk them up and they don't do it, that's fair, but also, I would say that that's actually more than I would have thought. Display positive and negative responses. Let me see the summarize first, and then let me see if I want to dive into it more. Okay, so positive summary of quantum. What is the question again? Quantum in general. Okay, so quantum in general. Excellent fight design, frequently described as fun, awesome, amazing, phenomenal, best fight in the expansion. Many praised the mechanic, creativity, tight design, and unique light and dark debuff swapping. Several players said it felt like a mini ultimate for 4 players, while they appreciated it. Strong appeal to high-end players. Ultimate Savage Stagers like the challenge, the personal responsibility of 4-man teams, the fast-paced mechanics. Players like checkpoint matchmaking, ability to practice at lower difficulties. Rewards not always needed. A noticeable subgroup didn't care about the rewards. They valued the challenge and the title prestige. They said they would run it even with no material incentives. Interesting. I may dive into that deeper. Negative responses. Rewards not worth the effort. Many called rewards garbage, pointless, non-existent, not worth time. Multiple said that they were completely demotivated from trying because of the rewards. That's more what I thought would be the case. Doesn't belong in Deep Dungeon. Some felt a Savage Ultimate style fight feels out of place in Deep Dungeon content. Time investment 100 floors plus quantum is too much. This is kind of what I heard from some people too, that latter. Too hard, stressful, clunky, especially from healers, non-raiders. Complaints about target swapping, HP balance, force debuff, CUA not helping enough, excessive pressure. Negative responders mostly agree the fight may be technically good, but is not rewarding enough. Too stressful, poorly integrated into Deep Dungeon, not worth time investment. Now that is the lesser majority, right? Because there is more positive than negative. But those are still kind of valid responses. Mixed, fun fight, but rewards keep coming up here. Interest without comment. I want to try, maybe in the future, when guides are clearer if I find a group. Conflicting about difficulty. Some praised 1540 scaling, others felt Quantum 15 was already too hard. Gap between 15 to 40 feels too weird. Most opponents disappointed by incentives, held back by logistics or stress, unsure if it's worth long-term engagement. Quantum is one of the best 4-man design fights of 14 ever made, and the challenge itself isn't rewarding. The content is too difficult, poorly rewarded, and out of place with the dungeon system. Quantum is mechanically impressive but suffers from poor incentives. So incentives, rewards, those are the big kind of sticking points to me when I'm reading that, and that's kind of what I heard, right? Display amount of times reward is mentioned, split into positive and negative. Let me see this one. Positive mentions of rewards, 9. They liked the titles. They were okay with the rewards. They did not need more than prestige. They were happy with the first light title achievement. 63 said, no. Rewards are garbage, not worth it. Need glory weapons, only rewarded title, no real incentive, disappointing, absolutely unappealing, useless sacks, pointless without rewards. There you go. Mostly negative on the rewards. Best fight in the game, terrible rewards. Why no shiny weapon? Well, I mean, this was the Criterion problem, right? That's what Criterion had a problem with. That, like, a lot of people agreed the fights were great, they just didn't have a reason to ever go back to it. Which kind of sucks, because, you know, if you need to cycle people through the content, I mean, you have less and less people over time wanting to do the content because they're done with it. They don't go back to it. Unless you're gonna, like, help someone. That, in my opinion, is a problem. Okay. How much fun did you have with PT? So in a party, this is a party mechanic, right? Of the 522, half of them had a 5-star, then 40% of them had a 4-star. So a vast majority thought it was good, average 4.38. I think the issue with this is that it should have had unique rewards versus the same thing from when you get... Right, because there's no reason why you would do it, right? I mean, if you're gonna go to a buddy, Phelan, and be like, hey, you wanna run Quantum? I mean, you want a kind of a vibe and a reason to do it. Oh yeah, let's get this really cool thing, or this shiny weapon, or something. Otherwise, you know, I think... I don't know. I think in today's modern game, it's hard to pull someone just because it's quote-unquote fun, right? Because there's so many other things you can do for fun. If you'd like to explain further in your thoughts on PT, do so here. Okay, this is gonna be good. So let's do this as a positive negative. Copy. Paste. 20 party thoughts on PT. Okay, so now let's bring this one over here. Go over here, new chats. Here, 20. Okay. Display positive and negative responses. And display frequency of each category. Split mixed responses in its own category. Okay. Quantum should augment your PT weapons with a glow or die slot. Even less incentive for most when you factor in just spending 20 to 30 million for each amount is easier than compared to... That's true! When you have an alternative way of getting the reward by spending it in an alternative manner, then yes. If you make it exclusive, which I guess the title's there, okay, fair, but... So, most of them were positive. Display negative response. Display negative responses not truncated in chat. Wait, is it not show? Oh, my bad. Sorry. Okay, so because you guys didn't see it, so we did a display of the positive and negative responses from the party thoughts on PT. Most of them were positive, 239. 99 were unclear and mixed, and 216 were negative. So we're gonna pull the negative ones right now. The negative ones. PT is a little too easy. Wish they would give Deep Dungeon itself difficulty sliders like they did in Quantum 40. PT was okay, I cleared all deep dungeons in groups and solo, but I think PT is way too easy later. Floors 81 plus were visually appealing, too claustrophobic, and it feels like they're, while visually appealing, too claustrophobic and while they're riddled with patrols. I'm also not a fan of offerings being the main job from Platinum Sacks. It feels like every Platinum I open are sacrificial lilies, which has led my group to just flat out ignore hordes starting at 71 plus. I wish there was more innovation, enemy variety, like the chameleons. PT was better than EO, but it's a bit too easy, and having checkpoints kind of removes the high stakes for feeling from the final floors. PT was fun to blind prog, however, I'm disappointed in how easy it was. I hate one-shots, soloing PU2D and Heaven on High is so much more fun. Boss is cool, floor is boring. Wish it was harder. Incest drops too much. Why are every AoEs conals? That's the second time I've seen that. PT is fine, doing it blind is fun, but doing it solo is more boring. Is the most boring thing I've done in my life. So this gamer would argue that staring at paint drying is actually more fun than soloing PT. Damn. PT was also... PT... The palms also feel a lot better in the previous deep dungeons. I really liked having the ability to practice the last floor as well. Horrible and useless palm design this time around. He was typing this mid commentary. Deep Dungeon is some of my least interesting piece of PvE content. I really didn't like much of the floors 80 plus. To me, that felt more like they were trying to artificially inflate the difficulty and spend time in there by increasing negative effects, monster rooms, cheap gotcha moments. I'm a lore nerd, so I loved it for that, but generally it's unchallenging and palms feel like they don't matter. Remember, this is from party runners, but less good compared to less of deep dungeons. Okay, summarize positive responses. Accessibility and checkpoints, the very common theme. Fun and pace, really fun, fast-paced, chill, but engaging, not a slog. Boss design, interesting, creative, fast-paced, memorable. Called a standout highlight, Quantum in 99. Visuals and environment, strong praise for outdoor floors, aesthetic design, scenery, atmosphere, music. Great for new returning players, quality of life improvements. Votives and incenses were seen as fun, fresh, interesting twists, giving PT its own identity. Best Deep Dungeon so far. Most fun I've had in Deep Dungeon. A massive upgrade over EO. Feels modern and better designed. First Deep Dungeon I actually want to replay. Those are the common responses. And bear in mind, in this breakdown of the feedback, mostly positive. Only 16. We almost read all the negative ones. Now, let me see. Summarize the mixed responses. What they liked. Even in mixed responses, players often praised boss designs, visuals, concept theme, quality of life, overall polish, and what they held it back for them. Difficulty felt too low. Floor design felt repetitive. Palms voters felt unbalanced. Rewards lacked excitement. Fun but too easy, looks great but boring, great first experience but not much replay value. Good entry deep dungeon, not great for veterans. Bosses are amazing, floors are lacking. Okay. For the people who said it was the best deep dungeon, did they only do EO before? And 51. Yeah, I didn't have that as a data point to try to find out. The party run was not filtered anywhere past other than just doing in the party, so yeah, I couldn't get that one. What do you think of the overall dungeon aesthetics? This is my favorite looking deep dungeon. Not bad. Small percentage said they didn't like it out of 522. Okay, so this is now kind of the aesthetic part, but in a party situation. So bear in mind, this is with party people. So let's see how it differs from the solo situation. Strong praise for overall look and variety. It's the prettiest one overall to me. More variety in room shapes. Very pretty, absolutely beautiful. Just a ton of nice looking scenery environments. Overall praise and general positivity. Mostly my favorite because I can't really compare it to others. It's the prettiest one overall to me. Very pretty. Best looking deep dungeon so far. It's colorful, strictly on the aesthetics, it's amazing. By far my favorite. Being outside open areas, it's being on an open field with more color certainly helped. I like outdoor aesthetic. So most of the people here liked it. Ilmeg, Shadowbringer love. I like the early look and feel, wish they continued more with Ilmeg. Shadowbringer nostalgia. Shadowbringer my beloved. 9.9 out of 10 OST, best music overall. More varied and less square rooms. The layout isn't as frustrating. Highly appreciate it. Floor-specific feedback. 1-40 was nice. Favorite couple sets were first couple sets were cool. Desert is pretty at first. Open aesthetic of desert is interesting. Desert part was unexpected but pretty fun. Okay. So those are the positive responses. The contrast between the floors helps feel like a journey. Seeing corruption increasing through floors is cool storytelling. Constant changing for floors giving a tunneling, traveling feel. Backdrops and vistas were beautiful. Okay, negative. Desert section, Amarang, biggest complaint. Too many desert floors in the middle, should have had more variety. 40 floors of desert is a lot, which is so interesting because it's just regular deep dungeon, you know? I wonder if people say the same thing about Heaven on High. Too many dungeon floors. Desert gets boring quickly. 50% desert is too much. That's not really 50%, but whatever. I don't like sand. It gets everywhere. Great comment. Amarang overstayed its welcome. Too much of a dungeon date. No one, like, a good majority of people did not like the deserts. Well, that's not true. It's not really... That's not a majority of people. I mean, I could also get the frequency. Hold on. Display frequency of positive and negative. 81 to 100 was underwhelming. Last 20 were a letdown. Feels like POTD 2.0. Feels uninspired. Didn't feel like a reward visually. More boring than expected. Comparisons where PT loses. Nothing beats Palace of Dead 150 to 200. EO final floors are better. POTD endgame will always be number 1. Bright environments made enemy cast effects hard to see. Some floors are too big. Too easy, not threatening enough. Okay, so then here. It was overwhelmingly positive, though. 184 were happy with it, while 35 were negative. I mean, the negative responses are fair, but... Traversing the desert maps felt super tedious with how big they were. 41 to 80 were deserts. Yeah, and what's interesting, I think, about this data point here, it's that you had a large amount of people complaining about the desert, and I think you had a small amount of people complaining about the thing. So hold on, I could actually do that, right? Display positive responses with desert and its frequency, and display negative responses with desert and its frequencies. Because people are positively talking about the desert, but it's also interesting because it's like, because obviously there are people who like the thing, right? So positive or mostly positive mentions of the desert. 10. Negative mentions of the desert. A lot. So it's just like, okay, you had more positive responses, right? But when you break it further down to very specific things, the deserts were not, I would say, more commonly would people dislike the deserts than like the deserts. Frequency 22 on that one, frequency 10 on the positive. Mixed was 3, so that's right. Okay. Let's go to the next one, which I think are the votives. Votives for parties. 95% thought it was great. 26 people thought they didn't care. How often did you use it? 94% used it all the time. A small percentage was careful, and then a very small over here. 6 people didn't use it. Okay. I feel like these will be kind of similar to what the solo gamers found. Save as. $22 votives. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was interesting. Other aesthetics stayed for only 20 floors as well, but the desert was 40 total. Like I said, I mean, to me, I get the complaint, but that is basically just typical deep dungeon split, right? I mean, if you look at all the deep dungeons, that's precisely how they split the floors. I mean, fair, you could have just changed it, but you know. Display positive. Oh, let me get back up again. Display positive and negative responses and frequencies of each category. EOKs at least change colors. And was that enough to actually distinguish people? To be like, they didn't complain in it? I mean, I guess you didn't have that many people doing EO. They're gonna try to put the survey somewhere that's easy digestible for the devs to read. So I'm gonna upload the video. What's actually interesting is I asked Sheila, is it a good idea for me to post this survey in public? And she actually said no, it's not. Because the thing is, if you like, her reasoning was this: if you just post out the responses like in public, people can infer their own thing to it, and it could get a little muddled with the responses. So it's a lot better when the person who created the survey, or at least certain people who are going to look at it, kind of as neutral as possible, or the ones explaining it, if you will. I'm like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So if anything, this video hopefully will be the one that gets done with that. However, if you guys have ideas, I'm going to hear them. So bear that in mind. I mean, I'm not going to dump the results. Like, we're going to have this here, and I can always refer to it back to it at a certain point. But, so this is the short responses on votives from people who did this as a party. Mostly positive, some negative. So I kind of want to... Oh, wait. What counted as positive? Fun, great, love them, awesome, fantastic. Mudball, bomb, sprint is amazing. Would love this in every deep dungeon. Adds a fun variety, worth using. Disliked the mechanic overall. Wanted it removed from future deep dungeons. Felt it was badly designed, pointless, or boring. From the minority. Don't want it back. Awkward, poorly designed. Not a fan. No decision making. Feels pretty unbalanced. Don't want this in future deep dungeons. Bad design, shallow, pointless. Mixed. Like the idea, but wanted stronger debuffs. Better balance, more variety. Felt neutral, but wouldn't miss. Fun, but buffs too strong. So the vast majority... So mixed was also a bigger majority. Not a lot of people didn't like it, but those negatives were definitely there. So most people liked it at 193. So they thought it was a good addition. So... Okay. So I think now we're going to run down the palms here. So it'll be Haste Palm. Party members, party teams thought it was okay. 42% thought it was good. And you know what I would expect to see from this one? Is people complimenting the fact that you could use it on your party. Because solo, you wouldn't obviously know that. But for a party member, yes, you would, because you would see it. And actually, when I started doing Match Party, I didn't even know that it actually applied to the party. I wonder if we're going to see that too. Hey Emily, how you doing? Good to see you. We are going over the PT survey. See, some things are not really too surprising. Definitely nice to kind of dive into it a little bit further. We're definitely going to put this up on YouTube. Okay, so positive responses 94, negative responses 64, mixed 136. Okay, so summarize positive responses. A clear DPS speed boost, especially strong on specific jobs. Black Mage Go Burr. Samurai Machinist Summoner Healers. Great synergy with strength. Party-wide buff. See, this is what I thought people would say is a big win. It affected everyone, only one person had to use it. It reduced awkward who should use X moments. That's true. That's true. Yeah. I don't know if I want to see that for other Poemators, but that's true. Summarize negative. I didn't even notice it. Lack of impact. Barely noticeable. Didn't feel any difference. Underwhelming. Messes with rotation muscle memory. True. breaks my muscle memory, causes drift, screwed up cooldown alignment. This feels like such a rating mentality. This came up especially from melee DPS. People who relied heavily on consistent GCD timing. Very job dependent, even uneven benefit. That's true. Yeah. Jobs can rely less on GCD speed, boring and unexciting. Who's doing a perfect rotation? Look, don't judge, okay, news. Maybe someone is capable of going through an entire rotation from floor 1 to 10, okay? Most notable job makes me feel awkward for this is Gunbreaker. I heard about that, yeah. Compared poorly to previous Pomanders, many players openly said that they prefer lethargy, frailty, petrification, time-based, or control Pomanders. That's a common thing. Oh, interesting. A small group mentioned motion sickness, dizziness, discomfort with visual speed, wishing for a toggle to reduce the effect. I kind of want to dive into this. Display responses of accessibility, and comfort, not truncated. It does help get out of AoEs faster, cover more ground, which is appreciated. It does make me a bit dizzy. I think it's you know what's interesting is I wonder if the same people complained about lethargy. Because, so, Nuz, what this is kind of going over, which I thought about, because I think some people said it, it's because of the animation, right? It fills the entire screen, and it's like a giant orange clock, right? So that's what they're kind of saying, that the visual is there. It's almost like a mini flashbang. But lethargy is the same exact animation, except it's light blue and it's slow, right? So that's kind of what they're referring to, so I can kind of see that. I think its use is okay, but special effects gave me motion sickness, and it was just hard to use. I ended up avoiding it. I think they should not add effects to palms, or at least give an option to turn them off as an accessibility option. Having a faster GCD, in my opinion, is always fun. It makes me feel like I'm not getting carpal tunnel for nothing, trying to make every input register every 2.5. I have time blindness. The haste didn't make really feel faster. I mean, this was a very small majority. This is only 6 people who kind of mentioned like something around accessibility, so, but also fair. Yeah, that's why I really appreciate these responses, right? Granted, it's again a very small majority. It's still something where I feel like I mean, someone's getting affected with it, right? So display mixed responses. Like, it didn't bother me. I know floor 50, the floor 50 boss bothered a couple people. The visuals there were kind of tough for some people, and some people with arachnophobia was having a difficult time getting through the boss. Summary of the mix. It's fine, I guess. Useful in some situations, not others. Good for bosses, meh on regular floors, slightly better in solo than party, vice versa. Highly job dependent. Overshadowed by other Pomanders. It's a mini strength. Hard to perceive its actual play. Yeah, that's about... yeah, okay. Alright, that's good enough for that one. Okay, so let's go to... Devotion. 50% thought it was great, 44% thought it was okay, and 18% thought it was bad. So let's do this one. And I wonder, with Party, if they knew that it always gave a buff, right? Because it's solo, I think we figured it out a little bit faster, but also it was more pertinent. Party, Devotion. So then, go here, go this one, here. Okay. Devotion, good palm. Generally speaking, yes. I think I mean, we went over the kind of the complaints of solo some people had with them. I mean, I personally liked it. I think the thing I liked most about it was the fact that it's a 2-floor palm, right? Approximately 120 entries, approximately 30 entries didn't like it, and 40 were mixed. Great addition, fun mechanic, guaranteed transformation, floor wipe is great. Good planning strategy, save my run, more votives equals more fun. Guaranteed mud ball bomb, okay. Useless garbage. Interesting. I want to see these negative responses. Display negative responses, not truncated. Delayed wipe so you can actually have a good strategy. Once I figured out the bit was fun to gamble with. Yeah, I mean, I think that initial bit is there, right? So let me see these negative responses from the party devotion. This one felt a bit awkward. I like the votive mechanic, but I'm not a fan of the pomander. Would have potential negative effects for the player. See, this is like I don't want to necessarily say this is misinformation, but this is what I would expect from party. That like you didn't have enough time to really analyze what the pomander was, so you're just gonna assume that it's going to be just a votive in general. Because part of the complaint that people had about devotion in the solo aspect was it didn't describe it correctly. Like it didn't have a good explanation. So on the surface, you wouldn't know that it guaranteed a wipe, right? Now, I mean, now as time goes on, we now know that more and more. But this is from the perspective of like week 1, week 2, week 3. So I'm not surprised that you get these type of responses. More Gamba, but at the same time could have been another pomander. I don't see it as often, but I don't think it's very useful. It feels slightly sluggish to use. Using a palm to get a randomly defined impact 2 floors from now, if you search the next floor, is a bit much. Got like 2, so didn't really try it. It being delayed for several floors is a little rough, though. I like the idea of it, but mostly forgot it existed. I did not get enough use of them, and it felt bad. And again, this is party, right? So like you're flying through the floors, so you probably are just like not even checking all the rooms. It's not as impactful. So this makes sense as some of this commentary for the positive, for the negative. Sorry. Don't remember what it does. I don't remember it. Without being terrible, I think they could have thought of some other type of pomander. You almost forget about it until you get one in the chest. You don't want to waste it. I honestly did not use or pay attention to this pomander. It's awkward not being able to use in floors 8 and 9. Nothing special, still had RNG candelabras. Again, didn't know that it gave you a wipe. It's a bit strong. Could have had something else. I feel like a lot of these negative responses is because they didn't quite know what it was for. And you have to wonder, is that a failure of game design or is that intentional, right? Because I feel like if you told these people that felt like it was useless and you're like, oh, it's a guaranteed floor, they probably would feel differently, you know? But of course, that's 30 out of 120, so most people thought it was positive. Summarize positive responses. Because party doesn't use palms into the boss. Yeah, exactly. Then that factors into it too, right? I mean, you know, leaving aside from the commentary for the responses about the fact that they thought it was useless. I mean, if it needed to have a use, then people would use it more, but it was unnecessary because you kind of flew through the dungeon, right? So then that kind of critique of the pomander kind of is validated in that sense, because why would I need it? It wasn't essential, so why am I going to use it, right? I run party in solo and make sure to use them as necessary. Yeah, and I wonder, like, in present day, if there are people who still don't know that devotion is a guaranteed floor wipe. You know what I mean? Okay, considered a floor... So this is the positive, right? So this is the vast majority of people who thought this was a positive thing. Considered a floor wipe or rage-like pomander. Basically a rage-like. So these are the people who knew, right? Planning element was seen as fun and strategic. Players loved the transformation and votive mechanic. Considered very strong, high-valued, even OP in a good way. Well-liked for solo and high-end. Fits the theme and identity to the dungeon well. So, I think you had like a really interesting kind of data point here where I feel like the people who thought it was negative are the people who didn't quite know what they did. And everyone who did know what they did, what it does, found it positive, no debate on that one, right? So that's actually interesting. So I wonder how that would be taken almost as a dev, you know? Like, was that sense of mystery kind of what you were aiming for? And were you happy with that, the fact that you had people who simply just don't know what it does? What do you think of the purification pomander? In a party, mind you, a party, okay? Solo, different. 36% thought it was great, 67% thought it was bad. So let's see what they said in the comments. I didn't... When I checked the purification in the solo, I was expecting more people to say LOL, and I was actually surprised that you didn't have that many people say LOL. Okay, 25. Party. Okay, here. Go up here. Let me take this one up here. New chat. Here. Add files folder. Party purification. Okay. So let's ask about the positive and negative of the responses. Surprised it's not 100% bad. I'm a little surprised that it's a lot higher in party that it's that it's okay. I mean, for solo, it was a very small majority that said it was okay. 240 out of 300 say it was negative. Neutral is 40 to 55. Positive, it's 10. Okay. So this was out of how many people? 347 responses. 347 responses. Okay, so let's take a look at the positive. Display positive responses not truncated. So helpful, I love these things. Feels very strong and works to counteract silence traps. It was useful. Actually pretty useful, more than I was expecting. This seems like a wonderful thing for solo players. It was helpful solo for those wolf patrols that poison you. Okay, valid response. The new buff is a great idea and a great help when you can't carry more. Saved me a few times while setting up witching rooms without sights and stepping on a silence petrify. Valid response. Great in that it's nice having an answer for walking over silence traps. Purification actually overseen by lots of people, but the palm itself really saves lives, especially during solo runs with the DPS. I like it. It's nice being able to remove a binding trap without healers rather than having to wait it out. The ability as a shield was nice at effect as well. Useful for getting rid of the ability of blocking debuffs when you don't have a healer. Nice if you aren't running a healer in the party. Pretty good on silence traps. It's helpful if you accidentally hit a silence. So silence traps, silence traps, silence traps. This one didn't get much use in our party runs, but I bet it's a big boon for solo runs. Who wants to tell this person? Actually, who wants to inform this gamer right here of the real reason this purification exists? Helpful for dealing with the combo silence pacification traps and helps a lot with unassumable debuffs while you're not playing Bard and Healer. Especially appreciated a lot. Especially where there's a mob with LOS Doom on the floors. With how Purification Palms work now, was able to pull mobs more comfortably without having to worry about random dot that may apply and finish the job. The idea is good, they saved me from some debuff traps while soloing. Nice, it gives an extra... So, I mean, these positive ones are fair. Like, all of these are pretty valid and pretty fair. Except so helpful, I love these things, and it was useful, or like Amazon reviews, right? So, okay, I want to summarize the negative responses. Summarize negative responses. Paid actors. Where's the money? I need the... What is the use for purification? There's like 3 uses. I mean, a lot of them, silence traps are valid, right? I mean, the silence traps, you can get rid of the silence traps, that's really good. But you had like the Gremlins in 81 and like Doom later on. Okay, main negative themes. Pardon me. I'll have to hit an ad after this one. Useless, pointless, wasted slot. Useless, worthless, waste of a slot, does nothing, complete garbage, no usable, mostly useless commander. Not enough debuffs in this dungeon to justify it. I am along these lines, because I agree with that. They're just like what Phelan said. What are you using it for? Well, I could tell you in my one hand what you're using it for. It should be more than that. Rare, easily avoidable, not dangerous enough, not enough cleansable effects. Yes. Very few debuffs that matter. Yes. Nothing needs it. Yes, that's true. Also a valid point. Nothing needs it. Only useful for silence pacification traps. Yes, also true. Doesn't work on important effects. Mimic Pox, Fairy, Polymorph, certain boss mechanics, Pyretic, Innovation, Doom. Nah, there's only one case of Doom. We'll leave that alone. Redundant if you have a healer or items. Also true. And a bard. And items, yeah. Someone mentioned before, like, if you kind of reduce the consumables, they would be more useful, and that's also fair. Bad or confusing design. I don't know what it does. Confusing names. Too similar to Purity. Feels like filler content. Devs just trying to fill a slot. Yeah. Disappointing compared to other previous Pomanders. Yeah. So I would agree with, like, these are all really good, like responses for sure and pretty valid for the negative part of it. But I hope they notice that. I mean, I would say lazy design is also part of it, right? Feels like filler content is a pretty strong one, but that's fair. It's like, it would be fine if it just had more uses, you know? It just doesn't have that many uses. Okay, I gotta hit an ad here. Will be the last ad on stream, and we'll continue the survey. We're actually getting close to finishing this up, so I actually may finish it today, so thank you guys for joining me. Let's finish up the survey, BRB. You think it was the reverse? Are you getting hit with an ad, Ross? You think they started out with a lot, then they toned it down with a dungeon? That is a very optimistic point of view from you. I'm very surprised. I'm not implying that you're a negative person. I'm just saying. What are your thoughts on a juniper incense? Okay. Display frequency of common. Yeah, common words. I guess. Let's try with that one. I'm gonna guess they dialed it back with the direction, made it more accessible to new players, but that made purification useless. Okay, that didn't help me. Remove filler words. Remove filler words. Impeccable timing for this. I just got my solo PT clear yesterday and a little late for the survey, I would say, says Emily. And welcome to the club, first and foremost. I'm late on reading your damn thing, but congratulations, let's go. Okay, let's just summarize this. Okay. Summarize responses, positive and negative. Display frequency of positive and negative responses. Okay, it's still posting shit. So positive was 245, negative was 55 with mixed neutral on the junipers. So let's see what the thing was. They felt very strong and impactful. MVP, game-changing, goated. Great variety and clear identities. Boss killer, map reveal, serenity, satisfying old school floor wipe. Dude, I feel old when they say that. Retro floor wipe. It's like, holy moly, dude. I'm not that old. Frequency described as best of the both worlds. More interesting than Heaven on High and EO. EO just mostly floor wipes. EO clones often described as underwhelming or samey. More versatile, more strategic, more engaging. Great for learning and casual groups. Strong lore. Okay, so then the negative was, what is it? 55. So, a percentage of this. Too strong for how common they are, especially in 81, so people understood that. Bark Bomb trivializes bosses. Maze Root feels overloaded. Too easy overall. High drop rate, low time pressure, less threatening enemy damage. Made runs feel less strategic, less tense, too forgiving. I love them, but powerful and fun but too common, interesting but overtuned, helpful but makes content too easy, strong but poorly managed, janky. Janky? I don't know about janky. Okay. Yeah, so that, I mean, that's the sense. I mean, most people liked it. The negatives were certainly fair, too. Okay, so for party members, did you use checkpoints to help progress towards your clear? A vast majority said yes, they did. No. Okay, what are your thoughts on checkpoints from parties? Everyone wants Dark Souls, you get hit, you die? No, because no... That's actually... I would disagree with that, because EO exists, and how many people do EO? Janky possibly with the witching aspect, since it's unpredictable. Display responses using janky or similar, not truncated. Describe similar issues with Maze Root or mechanic, shown full and untruncated. Okay. The site one has really weird AoE. Yeah, you know what? You're right, Phalon. The jankiness, I think, came with the witching part. Maze Root felt weird at first. Having a site and exit open is nice. Unlimited witching might sound OP, but why would I even fight monsters in the first place if the exit's open? Maybe mimics. Maze Root is extremely weird, and I've never been more frustrated over something when she decides not to use her thing or Mrs. Mobs. Bark Bomb is really strong and genuinely incredible if you're going solo clear. Pretty fun, but harder to predict compared to how Demis work in Orthos in terms of battle. Bark's too OP, Maze Root could be an interesting one on the floors, were a bit harder and you'd actually need a plan to skipping with insta-exit. Floor wipe is a floor wipe. Maze Sweep is very good for cutting time loss because it essentially skips floors if you avoid patrols, but Added benefit of being sight serenity in a periodic witching is very strong too. Maze was jank. Maze Root is a little jank to pull off cleanly, but can be still useful. Maze Root in particular. Okay, so yeah. So that checks out. Maze is jank. What is this again? What are your thoughts? Oh yeah, checkpoints. Okay. Save as. So yeah, I kind of forgot about the witching part. Checkpoints. I actually can't believe anyone would say Maze Root is not 10 out of 10. It's like 4 palms in 1. Confirmed, Maze Root is jank. Yeah, it would have been like a circular point blank AoE. I think it's total just because it made it more, crazy. So, checkpoint system from the party perspective, 279 were liked it, and 31 were critical. Most positive themes: improved accessibility, time pressure. Better for practicing learning. Reduce frustration, encourages more people to try deep dungeon, quality of life in groups. Negative, reduce challenge and prestige. This is the thing that keeps coming up. Although it's a small majority, it's only 31. Too many checkpoints, it's a bit too frequent. Too many, do you guys think there was too many checkpoints? I mean, granted it's a small majority, but do you guys actually think there was too many? I thought there was an appropriate amount. Economy reward concerns will lead to accursed hordes being devalued. Okay, not true. So that's actually one that they carefully crafted that wasn't the case. So this is fair from someone who, like, doesn't dive deeper into that. If you don't actually see how it's all set up, that is completely fair. But this, I think, is just... It's not the case. Makes the rewards a joke compared to the older deep dungeons. I don't know. Some of the rewards are still very pricey, aren't they? Behaviors changed in people. Makes people play more recklessly. Groups get careless since it's easier to restart. Interesting. That is probably fair. Yeah. Because you can just get back in. There's no risk, so that means you can just go whatever. Only one I would take out would be the 21 to 31, but I thought it's a good amount. Community response is strongly positive overall. Accessibility, time save, practice options, reduce frustration. Many ask for checkpoints to be added to the other Deep Dungeon 2, despite acknowledging the challenge trade-off. Hey Ludo, what's up, man? How you doing? Okay. Yeah, some of the concerns there were definitely valid for sure. Did you practice the floor 99 with the new duty? Half of them said yes, a quarter said no, and said this way. What do you think of the boss duty edition? Let's see what this one is for the party. Boss duty kind of made it trivial. Well, in a party, I imagine you're killing in what, 5 minutes? Or maybe 7 minutes? Does anyone even ever run in a light party with that? I mean, you don't get any rewards, so I mean, why would you? But PT is funny for me right now. I killed a T room with fortune to gain 4 intuitions at once. Nice. I wiped the 99 immediately, so I valued it a lot. Sure. I mean, I went into it knowing I will wipe it there. Okay. 246 said positive, 32 said negative, neutral mixed. Majority of responses are positive, expressing support and appreciation for the 99 practice mode. A small portion negative, mainly criticizing difficulty design and how it fits in Deep Dungeon. Significant number were mixed, often saying it's fine, not necessarily helpful, balanced feedback. Display, negative responses, not truncated. So most people liked it. I want to summarize the positive as well, but I'm going to see what the negative responses were in general. It was an interesting fight with keeping track of the puddles and 2 bosses in the top mechanics. It was a boss fight I have fun doing once I figured out the mechanics. I was needlessly punished and boring. It was needlessly punishing and boring like the EO bosses. To be honest, I think it's sad that they make the boss so difficult, that they add a separate duty for people to practice on before getting to the real deal. It's not something I'd like to see moving forward. More of going forward. It would be nice instead of having a separate duty, you could retry the floor set and not get achievements because you have a KO on your save file. Enable party respawns on the floors, but if you wipe, it stops the final achievement, having to get the boss and die to it and get back 30 floors of blind progress. Meh. People complaining that even 30 floors was still bad with the checkpoints. It's not a bad thing. But I don't think it that even the final boss is that mechanically complex that it needs to have its own special duty. Overall, it's fine with it, but I hope that they do continue with that sort of idea, that it doesn't take too much development time. Made the fight too trivial, not really that helpful, both good and bad because it takes away both from the sense of danger and feeling of satisfaction of getting clears. It was somewhat at the limit of Excalibur, but this boss has no place in Deep Dungeon. This is not a place for mechanics that require trial and error. Interesting. Outside of Quantum, it's not interesting. Too complex for a Deep Dungeon boss. Really? Does anyone in chat feel like the boss was too complex for a Deep Dungeon boss? Like, here I am wanting more complexity, and then you have someone being like, no, it's too complicated. Which is, again, fair. So I always thought I would want it more. Boss itself is okay, but it's a really bad... this is interesting to see from the negative side about it. Like, it's almost like there's a definition for a Deep Dungeon boss, and for these people, it's not it. You know what I mean? It should really have been unlocked before 99 itself, given the intention. Conflicted. It's meant to be a challenge, but if you do Quantum 40 before doing PT solo, you already know more than enough, so it's really whatever. The normal version is wasted compared to Quantum. I feel like it had about as much going on as Excalibur. No, I thought it had more than Excalibur, but also it was designed to kind of get you. It was engaging enough. I'll take it over Skilla. Why not? What? Come on. Have they tried EO last boss where they had to figure out how to handle temperatures? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that of course I won't know, right? So, I don't know. I thought I did. I mean, I think Ross was saying it earlier too. Like, if I had to go 99 PT without checkpoints, I think I would be in there way longer than Excalibur. Excalibur, I got to figure out pretty quickly, but I mean, it could also just be a personal thing. Summarize the positive responses. Overall sentiment: great, amazing, awesome, excellent, a small quality of life improvement, a necessary addition to the boss's mechanic complexity, which I've seen some complaints about that in one way or another. One of the best changes made in Deep Dungeon. Bear in mind, the positive responses overwhelm the negative responses at 248 versus 32. Allows more interesting boss design, more raid-like, more mechanically interesting, more challenging than past Deep Dungeon bosses. Great for solo progression. Solo players in particular praise it because allow them to test viability before the real run. Makes the content more accessible. New players, casual players, groups. Okay. People want it expanded. A lot of positive responses ask for this to be added. Other Deep Dungeon bosses, POCD Heaven on High, EO. This is in relation to a 99 booty boss duty. Earlier floors like 60 to 90, a boss practice, boss rush mode, other types of content, Goja Duel, Savage Ultimate. Players overwhelmingly see the 99 boss duty as an excellent, stress-reducing, skill-building addition that makes difficult content more accessible while allowing more interesting, complex boss designs. As a majority of the responses, right? And I think this is actually the last bit. So this I'll skip because this is just the people who didn't clear. So are there anyone here? Let me take a look at this one. I'll just look at it through here. Overall, a little underwhelming. Felt like if they had been 200 floors like Palace of the Dead, checkpoints as well, everything new would have been more fun and more worth it. Felt too short for what it was. The biggest thing they need to do in future Deep Dungeons is add scalable difficulty like Quantum to the actual Deep Dungeon. I think this low bar difficulty is good since I personally have had an extreme difficult time to get people to do other Deep Dungeon content with me. Where this one is much easier, but I think adding a Quantum difficulty mechanic would help give the challenge to people who wanted harder challenge. Maybe whatever Quantum-like thing they're doing for Variant Dungeon 7.4 can be used towards the next Deep Dungeon iteration. I really enjoy being able to matchmake through higher floors, especially since it allowed me to farm Ether Pool and get some practice outside the group. I like how the one comment is triple blow. A+ Deep Dungeon couldn't be happier. This is the ideal difficulty. Do not nerf it or buff it. Wow. If nothing else, I just hope to goodness that they add checkpoints to previous Deep Dungeons. Bosses are definitely the biggest upgrade to Deep Dungeon. I've always thought that the bosses should be the pinnacle of each floor set instead of, wow, look at a tank buster that deals 25% more than an auto attack. Wow, this person's calling out Godfather. So I'm glad they finally nailed it in that aspect. Mobs on the final floor set should probably have their HP increased by 10 to 20%. But otherwise, I think that the challenge scales up to a very good place compared to EO. I think the pros and cons of tank versus DPS and POTD in Heaven on High were balanced, and here I can see a similar argument in the case of living through most boss mechanics without Steel and Bark Bomb, but I think Picto just beats everything once you know what you're doing. Making almost everything stunnable is nice, but most of the things you can sleep as well, kind of removes the melee benefit and keeps ranged DPS on top. Interesting. Home Baba. We need more rewards. Removal of no ability blind debuffs is really nice. They just feel so anti-fun. I didn't ask about clearing solo matchmaking only. No, I did not. Rip that gamer. Always make weapons glow at 99 ether pool. Even add an incentive for replayability. Really only big complaint I have, base weapons. I wonder what the reaction would be if they made interrupt... If they made it like interrupt or sun or white. Oh, I see. Like if you didn't stop the move, like you just die. But that would be kind of bad because you would have some jobs that couldn't properly do it in fairness, but you could also give them. But yeah, the healers would only have sleep or a very delayed holy. Mud Ball is best motive. Votive. Way better than EO. Oh yeah, I didn't include some of the Japanese responses, but that's okay. I did appreciate the responses either way. Fails Peak. Really enjoyed the OST. Japanese response, let's go. I'm a palace shill. Level 10 boss is such a pain to solo on some classes without a Bark Bomb. Who designed this? Sad face. Easiest solo compared to the others, but I like more EO because the incense and votives encourage more strategic play. Definitely content I will enjoy farming. Okay. These are great responses. It does feel like SC had tried to incentivize more people to actually do higher level floors beyond what was considered the good leveling floors in early Deep Dungeons, something I feel like have been most successful at. I'm curious to see what the longevity of the content will be for the more generic player base, and if it will kind of mostly fall in the more niche Deep Dungeon solo community side of things. Debatable. Speaking solo, I think the design has taken away some of the challenge from people that enjoy running it. Sometimes I feel a bit mixed about because from speaking to friends, a lot of what made PT easier is also what made them find PT fun to do in way previous Deep Dungeons has not really succeeded at. Yeah, and that's the thing that we saw with the survey in general, is that yes, it's easy, people said it's so easy, but they also said it's fun. So, you know, like harder does not necessarily equate to more fun, but also easier does not necessarily equate to not fun. I've also seen a lot of fans attempt solo runs would never have considered it previously. I hope going forward, the future Deep Dungeon design can work on a solution how to preserve more of the challenging side of solo runs while also keeping a lot of quality of life solutions they made in PT. Yes, I would love to have better chances at new rewards adding to the loot pool, especially if we were talking about the platinum sacks, or at least make it less diluted with old junk nobody cares about. I would love to be able to see percentage chance of drops. I would love to have better theme rewards. That's a lot of hopes. It seems like overall this Deep Dungeon was made to provide an experience similar to EO, but a more approachable format. I feel like it was successful on that front. Much like EO, once you have the mechanics down, it is easier Deep Dungeon overall compared to POTD and Heaven on High. So the people who are looking to be challenged might have a harder time finding it here without making their own challenge. Yes, this Quantum considered that pretty separate from the overall Deep Dungeon experience. I think it's a good step forward, but overall I think it should have a bit more difficulty, especially with mob mechanics outside of AoEs. That was a good one too. So yeah, the rest of this is more just kind of the extra bits, kind of also to filter out people who like hadn't cleared, but still giving them something to ask for. Do you intend to clear this content? So this is from people that has not cleared it at the time, so at least most of them did want to do it. A lot of people here. Worst content in any game to date, I would rather watch paint dry, said the gamer who did not finish PT. Dang. No time, it is not fun, not worth resubbing to buy DT for, not worth subbing again. Consider Deep Dungeon to be incredibly boring and annoying, probably the least enjoyable content in the game. It's not fun, friends not interested, there's no rewards for doing 100, so it seems like a waste of time. Realistically, I cannot clear, so no point in trying. Grinding other aspects of the game, it's not fun. Honestly, no more love for the content of the game. Dang. Deep dungeons aren't that fun. It looks like OC, where everything in this deep dungeon exists to farm power for Savage Raid. Dang. That's rough. But fair. Look, you have a comment, right? You can't make everyone happy, so I mean, that's fair. These are the people that did not clear and explicitly said that they have no intentions of clearing the content. Are you having fun with PT? The people who are working on it, most said yes, they are. 211, the people who did not clear at the time. If you have done other Deep Dungeons before PT, how are you feeling the climb so far? This was the best Deep Dungeon experience so far. 73% said it while doing it. If you wish... I wish you best of luck with a return. 82%. So, there you go. Survey. Completes! Yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that. You know, just the casual 4.5 hours of explaining a survey. Yeah, I mean... The general sentiment, I mean, I think there are some interesting responses to it, for sure. There are some things that certainly weren't surprising. You know, like what people thought of purification, aesthetically and everything. These are and what was kind of interesting to me in general was kind of how that survey pretty much fed back into what I was hearing through your guys' feedback when we were doing streams and everything, and we were just talking about PT and everything, and a lot of it aligned to what I've heard. No real surprise in too many things, at least that sticks to my mind right now. But, I mean, generally speaking, I think PT looks like it was a pretty good success with the vast majority of the player base. Most had fun, most thought it was easy, certainly people wanted it to be harder, but it's hard with the way they design things that you can't get the entire, like, all worlds into it, right? That's the other issue. I mean, unless you're going to design something specific for the challenge and specific for not the challenge, I mean, it's going to be hard to kind of get that balance where everyone is happy. But you still have this kind of situation where, you know, the Deep Dungeon community formed because it was really freaking hard. So it's definitely this awkward position where the community that essentially kept Deep Dungeon alive is not being satisfied. And granted, you could still have a different community with the people who are now jumping into it, but that will only come with time, right? So, yeah, I mean, I agree with a lot of the things that was mentioned in the survey. I was definitely agreed with a lot of kind of some of the negative commentary there, which is fine. But overall, it was definitely interesting to see all those responses, so I hope you guys enjoyed it.